The ground was unceasingly shaking, people were shouting, the Qi Xie cavalry were galloping, and chaos reigned over the crowd. They were all running away from this scene. In a short moment, the Shuiyu soldiers were not encircling the death sentence stage anymore. Instead, the Qi Xie cavalry had replaced them as the Shuiyu soldiers backed away. The ground was unceasingly shaking, people were shouting, the Qi Xie cavalry were galloping, and chaos reigned over the crowd. They were all running away from this scene. In a short moment, the Shuiyu soldiers were not encircling the death sentence stage anymore. Instead, the Qi Xie cavalry had replaced them as the Shuiyu soldiers backed away. At the same time, a large group of Shuiyu soldiers were coming to attack from the back of the stage. But the Qi Xie cavalry all suddenly stopped and looked at the silhouette leaning against Lu Zhanglan's chest. In the past, that person used to be their leader, and he was now killed. SSSS, the spears of the Qi Xie troops flew through the air. Everyone's hearts started to race. Qi Xie soldiers were willing to encircle the imperial city for their general, they were also capable of attacking Shuiyu soldiers for their officer. What was happening within that huge area was complete chaos, thousands of soldiers had already died. What was the reason? Lin Feng remained uncommunicative. Jiu Qi Xie was a true leader and a great man. Lin Feng's sword was dancing through the air. He cut the chains around Lu Zhanglan's body, but Jiu Qi Xie was still leaning against him, in silence. Lin Feng, you came into the imperial city with rebel forces and personally rescued the criminal, Lu Zhanglan. You deserve a death sentence, said Duan Tianlang, whose voice sounded ice-cold. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Rebel forces, said Lin Feng while fixedly staring at Duan Tianlang. His tone was cold too. Die, shouted one of the Qi Xie soldiers. Die. That shout was imposing and heavy. Deadly energy spread through the atmosphere. The Qi Xie soldier raised his long spear. Stop, shouted Lin Feng while turning around. In a flash, everybody quieted down. They were all staring at Lin Feng. They didn't understand why he had stopped them. Nonetheless, they all stopped moving and remained silent. I haven't given you any order to attack. If you attack, I will personally kill you, said Lin Feng coldly. The hearts of the Qi Xie cavalry were pounding, but when they saw how strict Lin Feng looked, they all remained silent. Encircle the stage, said Lin Feng coldly. The Qi Xie soldiers obeyed his order and started galloping. In a flash, the Qi Xie soldiers encircled the entire death sentence stage so that not even a single drop of water could trickle through. At that moment, Lin Feng had become a sort of pillar for these soldiers. Even though he wasn't their direct superior, everybody obeyed his orders. You will die. Duan Han was standing next to Duan Tianlang. He narrowed his eyes and intensely stared at Lin Feng. Lin Feng had led a rebel army. Even though Lin Feng was considered a hero in Shuiyu, he had committed a crime and had to pay for it. Lin Feng coldly glanced at Duan Han. Duan Han's heart twitched. He then closed his mouth, and then Lin Feng disregarded him like he would an insect. He started walking to the front of the death sentence stage. Bring Her Highness up here, said Lin Feng. Immediately after, some soldiers wearing bronze masks slowly arrived. Behind them was a beautiful silhouette on a horse. That beautiful woman made people's heartbeats accelerate. She looked pure and noble. Incredibly, that was the princess of Shuiyu, Duan Xinyi. Princess, you have returned. Lin Feng really went to Mou alone and returned with the princess, thought some people in the crowd while looking at that beautiful silhouette. Concerning Duan Tianlang, he narrowed his eyes. Not only had Lin Feng come but the princess too. Soldiers, salute your princess, said Lin Feng while glancing at the soldiers. They didn't understand what Lin Feng was doing at that moment, but knelt down on one knee and shouted in unison, Your Highness. Lin Feng calmly looked at the soldiers surrounding the death sentence stage and said coldly, How come Duan Tianlang's army did not salute the princess? Is she not your princess? Are you really this disrespectful? Duan Tianlang was stupefied. He immediately shouted coldly, "Why are you not kneeling down?" The Xueyu soldiers obeyed the order and knelt down, while shouted in unison, "Your Highness." Duan Tianlang salutes Your Highness. Your Highness has come back. This is great news for our country, Xueyu, said Duan Tianlang while slightly bowing and lowering his head. This is all thanks to Lin Feng, said Duan Xianyi calmly while coldly looking at Duan Tianlang. When Duan Tianlang heard Duan Xianyi's manner of speaking, his facial expression changed. He didn't know what to say. He wanted Lin Feng to die and accused him of having brought rebel forces. But at that moment, Lin Feng had come back with the princess, which was an incredible military exploit. As expected, Lin Feng is our country's young hero, said Duan Tianlang while raising his head, and then said in a small voice while smiling, but even though Lin Feng saved you, he has still committed a great crime by gathering rebel forces and bringing them into the imperial city, and that is not an insignificant crime. Duan Tianlang is still thinking of how he can falsely accuse others of crimes, said Lin Feng indifferently. Duan Tianlang was stubborn and said, meritorious acts are meritorious acts, crimes are crimes. I Duan Tianlang, must declare your faults for the sake of justice. Justice? Duan Tianlang, how long has it been since we last saw each other? It seems like you get even more shameless each time we meet. I thought it was impossible to be more shameless than you when we last met, but once again you have proven me wrong. Said Lin Feng in a cold tone. The crowd was astonished. Lin Feng surprisingly dared to call Duan Tianlang shameless in front of everybody. The ground started shaking again and rumbling noises spread through the atmosphere. The crowd was surprised. The crowd moved back again and opened a path. At that moment, an incredible number of soldiers were coming. It was the Imperial Guards. Duan Tianlang felt relieved. A short moment after, the army of guards arrived. The Wuxia soldiers surrounding the death sentence stage wanted to attack, but Lin Feng waved his hand, signaling them to stand their ground and remain calm. Two silhouettes slowly came from the group of Imperial Guards. One of them was wearing armor. He looked majestic and powerful, while the other was a handsome young man, the second prince, Duan Wuxia. Did you kill Meng Gufeng and Meng Chong? This person is Meng Han, the officer of the Imperial Guards. Officer Meng Gufeng was his brother. Said Duan Wuxia. Indeed, said Lin Feng sounding calm, cold and detached. Huh? Duan Tianlang was stupefied. Lin Feng had killed Meng Gufeng and Meng Chong. Inside, he was laughing coldly. He was evilly staring at Lin Feng and then said, Lin Feng, you saved the princess, which is a military exploit, but acting arrogantly, you dared to kill an officer and then bring rebel forces into the imperial city. These are both extreme crimes against the country. To pay for your crimes, the only solution is death. Then, Duan Tianlang turned around and looked to Duan Wuxia. Your Highness, please punish Lin Feng for his crimes. Duan Wuxia looked relaxed. He had perfectly mastered his emotions. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth and he said, Lin Feng, Duan Tianlang wants to punish you for your crimes. Is there anything you want to say? Yes, said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. He then immediately turned to Duan Tianlang and said, Duan Tianlang, during the war, because he wanted to kill me, he created chaos within our army, allowing the MOU army to exploit the weakness that he created. Hundreds of thousands of Xueyu soldiers died so he could have the opportunity to kill me. It was a bloodbath. Now he wants to punish me for my crimes with a death sentence. I don't think that it's a strange thing at all. When Lin Feng finished talking, the crowd was astonished. Duan Tianlang had caused chaos within their own army because he wanted to kill Lin Feng. From what they had heard, Lu Zhonglan was responsible for that. He's talking nonsense, Your Highness. Not only is Lin Feng a traitor but he is also a lying little rat. Don't trust him, said Duan Tianlang. Of course, he wasn't going to admit his faults. Lin Feng perfectly knew that. Duan Tianlang is calling me a traitor, yet he gives no explanation and wants punishment. At what moment have I rebelled? Asked Lin Feng. You came into the imperial city with rebel forces, killed Meng Gufeng as well as Meng Chong, you encircled the death sentence stage and rescued Lu Tsonglan, who is a criminal. Everybody saw this with their own eyes. Is that enough? Shut your filthy mouth, furiously shouted Lin Feng, his eyes unveiled killing intent. He was exasperated. He then pointed at the Qi Xie cavalry. Duan Tian Lang, these soldiers have courageously fought against the enemy. We encircled them inside the city and burnt them alive inside. We killed hundreds of thousands of the Mou army. In the end they were forced to retreat. At that moment, I'm asking you, where were you? You had already deserted the army and ran back to the imperial city like a little scared dog. You are really audacious. And now what? You are calling me a traitor, but I want to ask you, who are you to call me a traitor? Are you the one who decides? What status do you hold where you think that by calling me a traitor, I instantly become one? Lin Feng's voice sounded extremely cold. Duan Tian Lang was speechless. The crowd was also astonished. They had killed hundreds of thousands of Mou soldiers in Duanren city, and made them retreat. At that moment, Duan Tian Lang had already run away. How could he judge someone else's faults? Duan Tian Lang looked glum. He then coldly said, the imperial city is a holy place in Shuiyu. Is it normal for an army to enter it by force without permission? Is it normal to kill an officer and his son when entering the city? If that is not being a traitor, then what is? Duan Tian Lang looked glum. He then coldly said, the imperial city is a holy place in Shuiyu. Is it normal for an army to enter it by force without permission? Is it normal to kill an officer and his son when entering the city? If that is not being a traitor, then what is? The princess and I rushed back to the imperial city, then some soldiers attempted to assassinate us. Besides, they were all Shuiyu soldiers. They knew that the princess was there, but they still tried to kill us. I want to ask you, Duan Tian Lang, doesn't the whole army now follow your commands? Nonsense, how could they be my soldiers? Quickly refuted Duan Tian Lang angrily. Well then, the most amusing part is that even if they were not your soldiers, my role is to protect the princess, and I ordered the Qi Xie cavalry to protect her and accompany the princess to the imperial city. However, Duan Tian Lang, you call me a traitor and want to kill me. You also called these soldiers rebel forces. If I understand your argument, you're clearly saying that we are a rebel army and deserve to die, because we protected the princess against countless squads of Shuiyu soldiers that you claim were not under your control. Is that right? Lin Feng's words made Duan Tian Lang's face sink. Lin Feng had only said a few words, but he had exposed Duan Tian Lang. Lin Feng's last words had been so eloquent that they cornered Duan Tian Lang. Of course, protecting the princess is not a crime, but Officer Meng Gufeng and Meng Chong's deaths, how do you explain them? Things are not as simple as you would have others believe, said Duan Tian Lang looking evil. I was outside of the imperial city. Meng Chong knew that the princess was amongst us but still gave the Shuiyu soldiers the order to fire arrows at us, including the princess. Duan Tian Lang, Lin Feng, want to ask you, was killing him the right thing to do? Duan Tian Lang narrowed his eyes and said, yes, he deserved to die. Well then, I will ask you something else. Meng Chong's father, Officer Meng Gufeng, let his son give the order to kill the princess and then committed another offense by preventing the princess from entering the imperial city. Was killing him the right thing to do? Lin Feng's voice was cold and sharp. It was the right thing to do, said Duan Tian Lang, agreeing with Lin Feng. Duan Tian Lang, you're saying it yourself, they deserve to die, so now I want to ask you, what crime have I committed? Am I a traitor because I came into the imperial city with soldiers who were protecting the princess? Said Lin Feng coldly while staring at Duan Tian Lang. Lin Feng had prevented the Qi Xie soldiers from attacking because he had a plan. A few tens of thousands soldiers was a minuscule amount. If they had attacked, they would have immediately been considered as a rebel army and would have been wiped out. Humph, You protected the princess, that is indeed a meritorious act, but a moment before, you killed some soldiers which belonged the enforcement troops and rescued the criminal Lu Tsanglan. Isn't that a crime? Of course that is not a crime, said Lin Feng while staring at Duan Tianlang, and then continued, General Lu Tsanglan went to war and fought against Mou for our country, Shuiyu, but you abandoned him. You're a deserter who accused him of your own crimes. How could I not save him? A deserter. Duan Tianlang had a hideous expression on his face. Lin Feng was, once again, humiliating him in front of everyone. Duan Tianlang, no need to hurry and justify yourself. I have been answering so many questions, however you have your own crimes to account for, said Lin Feng with a smile yet not a smile on his face. He then continued, Duan Tianlan, the Qi Xia cavalry and I were protecting the princess. Why can't you distinguish good from bad? Why do you say that we have committed crimes? Why did you hurry to accuse us of various crimes? Why are you trying at every possible occasion to sentence me to death? Besides, when I came here, why did you try and hurry the execution of Lu Tsanglan? Also, when the princess and I came back to the city, we were attacked by several squads of Shuiyu soldiers. As far as I know, you command those soldiers. Are you not the one who ordered them to kill me and the princess? Lin Feng's questions made the crowd astonished. It seemed like that entire story wasn't as simple as they had thought. All your questions are attempting to harm my reputation. I will refrain from answering them, said Duan Tianlang coldly. He didn't care. What could Lin Feng do anyway? You have the right not to care, but I want to ask you something. Has General Lu Tsanglan committed any crime? Duan Tianlang was furious and really wanted to kill Lin Feng. As far as Lu Tsanglan, everybody knew about him, nothing could be kept secret. Lu Tsanglan sowed disorder amongst the troops, making us lose a battle against Mou, leading to the death of hundreds of thousands of troops, and he didn't protect the princess who was kidnapped. Are all these crimes enough for him to be sentenced to death? This is your version of events. The person who committed all of these crimes, was it not actually you? Said Lin Feng while smiling indifferently. Immediately after, he pointed at Duan Wuxia and said, the second prince is here as a witness. I hope that you would not dare to lie in the face of our second prince. It was me, admitted Duan Tianlang as he forced the words from his mouth. He, how shameless, what a shameless dog, but on the other hand, I am not surprised. Said Lin Feng while smiling. His tone was humiliating Duan Tianlang. I just want to ask, you, Duan Tianlang, you say that the princess was kidnapped. Where was she kidnapped exactly? Was she in one of Lu Tsanglan's tents at that moment, or was she in one of your tents? Lin Feng smiled and said, the princess is here before us. I hope that you would not be planning to tell any lies. Duan Tianlang was blankly staring at Lin Feng. His mouth was about to move, but then Duan Wuxia spoke, Uncle, for the sake of justice, please reply to Lin Feng's questions. I will be fair. The situation was awkward for Duan Tianlang. He said in a low voice, she was in one of the tents from my campsite. When the crowd heard Duan Tianlang, they burst into an uproar. Surprisingly, it really was exactly as Lin Feng was explaining. Since those are the facts, there is something that I don't really understand. If the princess was kidnapped in one of your tents, why would Lu Tsanglan have to bear the responsibility for it? How has he committed a crime? Besides, you still have the face to order Lu Tsanglan's execution. I would like to hear your explanation. Lin Feng was speaking extremely loudly so that everybody could clearly hear what he was saying. Please explain. Shouted all of the Qi Xia soldiers who were encircling the death sentence stage. Duan Tianlang's facial expression was utterly hideous. At that moment, if Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi hadn't returned, Lu Tsanglan would have already been executed. The entire situation had changed. Lu Tsanglan is a general. He didn't properly ensure the security of the campsite, giving the Mou troops an opportunity to kidnap the princess. Of course that it is a crime, said Duan Tianlang, trying to pass the blame again, but obviously, his argument couldn't persuade anyone in the crowd any longer. So that's the reason, said Lin Feng while smiling. Well, I was there too, and at the moment when I tried to chase the kidnappers, your troops obstructed my path and said that I plotted against the princess. You were the one who always wanted me dead. Immediately after the princess was kidnapped, you were already there to execute me, but did not see the kidnappers. How did you manage to do that? When Lin Feng said that, everybody looked at Duan Tianlang expecting a prompt answer. Everybody wanted to know what really happened on the battlefield that had led to the death of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Duan Tianlang remained silent. Since Duan Tianlang remained silent, I will say what happened myself. Duan Tianlang, you wanted to make it appear as if I was the culprit and sacrificed the princess in order to settle a personal grudge with me. When Lu Zhanglan saw that you were trying to kill me unjustly, he brought his army to stop you and then you ordered your soldiers to attack his. Clearly this was the act of a noble war hero. Besides, once disorder had been sown amongst the army, the Mou army attacked and they killed hundreds of thousands from the army. Lin Feng's voice was calm and solemn. While looking at Duan Tianlang, he said, Duan Tianlang, is what I am saying the truth or not? The hearts of the people in the crowd were pounding. Surprisingly, Duan Tianlang was the person who caused so many deaths and Lu Canlan was to be executed for Duan Tianlang's crimes. Nonsense, furiously shouted Duan Tianlang. Lin Feng was smiling and then continued, I am not done talking. Duan Tianlang, there is no need for you to try and cover up the truth any longer. After the chaos, and after hundreds of thousands of soldiers had been killed, the Shuiyu army returned to Duanren city. There was evidence that the person who kidnapped the princess was working for Mo Yu. Besides, at the moment when the princess had been kidnapped, it was soldiers under your command that blocked my path and let the kidnappers escape. They were traitors, and yet again they were surprisingly under your command. I can say that there isn't a single person within the army who doesn't know about these acts of treason. What explanation can you provide? So that's how it happened. The person who kidnapped the princess was from Mou and Duan Tianlang was the one giving the orders. Besides, he was using every opportunity to kill Lin Feng. That news was shocking. After that, Lu Zhanglan and I fought against the enemy, organized an ambush in Duanren city and set it on fire. At that moment, you, Duan Tianlang, had already deserted to the imperial city. Everyone knows what happened after. You changed the entire story and gave Shuiyu a false version of events in which Lu Zhanglan was responsible for your crimes. Then you had done your best to execute Lu Zhanglan. Besides, the princess and I were missing and assumed dead, so we could not testify to your crimes. The problem is that if either of us returned alive, you would have been in trouble, so you ordered several squads of soldiers to kill us on the way. When Lin Feng finished talking, the entire crowd was drowned into silence. The crowd was now having doubts. Maybe, Duan Tianlang was really the mastermind behind this entire plot. Lin Feng, you're just trying to ruin my reputation. What you're saying is a pack of lies. I have never dispatched anyone to kill you or the princess. Besides, I suspect that you're the one who kidnapped the princess, and it is only because you have threatened her and she's under pressure that she listens to you, said Duan Tianlang while making a false accusation. Lin Feng, you're just trying to ruin my reputation. What you're saying is a pack of lies. I have never dispatched anyone to kill you or the princess. Besides, I suspect that you're the one who kidnapped the princess, and it is only because you have threatened her and she's under pressure that she listens to you, said Duan Tianlang while making a false accusation. Is that so? How come the high-ranking soldiers who tried to kill me told me that they were only obeying orders and the Black Guard lieutenants confirmed that you were collaborating with Mou? You sowed disorder within our army which resulted in the death of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. If you were not working with Mou, why would you have attacked Lu Zhanglan's army? You, Duan Tianlang, are good at secretly at plotting against people, said Lin Feng sounding cold and detached. The crowd was astonished. Duan Tianlang had collaborated with Mou? Lin Feng's words were too powerful. These crimes were enough for Duan Tianlang to be sentenced to death a few times over. Duan Tianlang's heart was also pounding. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Surprisingly, Lin Feng was also declaring that Duan Tianlang had collaborated with MOU. Lin Feng, I devoted my life to Shuiyu and you dare say that I collaborated with the enemy, how am I supposed to let you live, said Duan Tianlang while releasing a deadly qi. He really wanted to kill Lin Feng. So that's how it is, you really did commit all of these crimes. I said that you collaborated with MOU and again the only thing you can do is try to silence me. Apart from that crime, you also deserted and created chaos within the troops, which resulted in the death of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It was a bloodbath. Then, you tried to make Lu Zhonglan bear the responsibility for all of these crimes, then you almost killed him. Also, because of you, the officer of the Qi Xie army, Jiu Qi Xie, is now dead. How could the army of Qi Xie forgive you? Lin Feng sounded imposing and domineering. Immediately after, he looked at the soldiers and said, tell me, can you forgive Duan Tianlang? No. We can't. The tens of thousands of Qi Xie soldiers were shouting loudly and aggressively. Duan Tianlang suddenly had the impression that he was being absorbed by Lin Feng. All right, shouted Lin Feng. Immediately after, he looked at the second prince and said, Your Highness, you have seen it too, I only said a few truths and Duan Tianlang tries to kill me. Besides, the soldiers cannot forgive him for what he has done. Now, if Duan Tianlang kills me, I will have no regrets because I have done nothing wrong. However, I would like to ask Your Highness and Officer Meng not to intervene in this fight. Duan Wuya had remained silent, almost the entire time. He looked pensive while looking at Lin Feng. He was also surprised. Lin Feng's words had been sharp, harsh and powerful. Duan Tianlang couldn't reply at all. At that moment, a battle was probably going to break out and if Officer Meng didn't get involved, Lin Feng would have the advantage. At the moment, I cannot clearly distinguish what is right and wrong but there is already a profound hatred between Duan Tianlang and you. If he wants to fight against you, I will not prevent him from doing so. I want to see if he believes he has the required ability to kill you, said Duan Wuya indifferently. Everybody was astonished. Duan Wuya said that he was wondering if Duan Tianlang had the ability to kill Lin Feng but actually, that was covering his tacit consent for Lin Feng to dispose of Duan Tianlang as he wished. But everybody understood what Duan Wuya meant. He had agreed and the crowd was astonished. Duan Tianlang also remained silent. He felt ice-cold chill in his heart. Duan Wuya was not hiding his intentions anymore, he wanted to kill him. Officer Meng, said Duan Tianlang while glancing at Duan Wuya and then immediately looking at Meng Han. Duan Tianlang has a high status within the imperial family. I, Meng Han, am the officer of the Imperial Guard. I have to protect the entire imperial family. I obviously couldn't accept it if anything happens to Duan Tianlang, said Meng Han sounding calm. He was clearly on Duan Tianlang's side. Duan Xinyi and Duan Wuya were worried about Lin Feng, they would help him even if it meant contradicting Duan Tianlang. Lin Feng was calmly looking at everything that was happening around him. Besides, Meng Han, who was the officer of the Imperial Guards, didn't even care about making Duan Wuya lose face. It seems like the fact that Duan Wuya and Meng Han both came has a profound meaning, it shows that they are both in opposing factions, thought Lin Feng. The things that happened within the imperial family were hard to understand. He. When Duan Wuya heard Meng Han, he laughed but the laugh also contained some coldness. An officer of the Imperial Guard, indeed, thought Duan Wuya. Immediately after, he started walking slowly towards Duan Xinyi and asked, Xinyi, is what Lin Feng said the truth? Did you really get kidnapped in Duan Tianlang's tent? Yes, it is the truth, said Duan Xinyi while nodding and then added, on that day, Lin Feng and I were chatting in the tent when suddenly, an assassin came and as Lin Feng saved me, I was kidnapped. After that, the kidnapper confirmed that he received orders from the Holy Courtyard and Uncle Duan, who were cooperating with MOU. Duan Tianlang was also plotting against Lin Feng. I understand, said Duan Wuya while slightly nodding, and then immediately said, Xin Yi, you went through many hardships because of me. When he finished talking, Duan Wuya walked back towards Duan Tianlang, who started feeling uncertain. Duan Tianlang didn't fear many people, but Duan Wuya was one of those he feared. Duan Wuya's way of working wasn't easy to understand. There were very few people who could guess what he was thinking. Then, Lin Feng and Lu Zhonglan managed to encircle the enemy in Duanren city and burnt the city, killing a few 100,000 enemy soldiers. Then they were forced to retreat back to Mou. Duan Tianlang, would you like to say anything about this? Duan Tianlang was fixedly staring at Duan Wuya and said, no. All right, said Duan Wuya while nodding, and continued, during the battle, a few 100,000 soldiers were sacrificed, but regardless of that, Lin Feng and the princess have come back to the imperial city alive and the invading army has been repelled. Besides, there was also a huge misunderstanding about Lu Zhonglan, right? That's right, said Duan Tianlang, who didn't feel like nodding anymore. Good, said Duan Wuya while nodding. He started walking on the death sentence stage and glanced at the crowd. He then said, the dead are already gone and I am not looking for the guilty party any longer, but my family has falsely accused General Lu Zhonglan. General Lu Zhonglan, the divine arrow, has always been loyal, devoted and courageous. He has always fought for the country. We can't forget that. I will report all of this to my father. I would like to grant Lu Zhonglan with the status of imperial minister, and he will also retain his status as a general. Besides, we will grant Zhou Qixia with a posthumous title for his courage and loyalty. He was conferring an imperial title upon Lu Zhonglan and a posthumous title upon Zhou Qixia. For Lu Zhonglan, that didn't matter much. In Duanren city, he was already like a king. As far as Zhou Qixia, what was the point in granting him a title? He was already dead. But Duan Wuya's point was more about admitting that the imperial family had made mistakes. They had unjustly accused Lu Zhonglan, but they recognized his loyalty and courage. Uncle, do you agree with these things? Said Duan Wuya while looking at Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang was surprised and had no choice but to nod. They were rendering justice to Lu Zhonglan and at the same time establishing Duan Tianlang's own guilt. Lu Zhonglan retained his title as a general. General, what do you think about it? Asked Duan Wuya to Lu Zhonglan. Lu Zhonglan still had Zhou Qixia's corpse leaning against him. He slowly looked at the Qixia troops. He looked expressionless. I, Lu Zhonglan, am grateful to the second prince, thank you for your kindness. I am willing to accept these titles, said Lu Zhonglan sounding indifferent. General! Shouted the thousands of soldiers. How could he accept? Accepting meant letting Duan Tianlang get away with it. Lu Zhong looked at the crowd. Many of the soldiers were looking at Lin Feng. Lu Zhonglan sighed but also felt gratified. Lin Feng could now lead a whole army without Lu Zhonglan's help. Officer Zhou's last wish was to grant Lin Feng the status of officer of the Qixia after his death. From today, Lin Feng, you are the officer of the Qixia army. I will first bring the soldiers back to Duanren city and then hand the army over to you. Forget about what happened today, said Lu Zhonglan. Immediately after, he jumped on a horse while carrying Zhou Qixia's corpse in his arms. A wave of sorrow filled the atmosphere. Everybody could feel how desperate and sad Lu Zhonglan felt. They had fought loyally for their country and this was how they were repaid. When Lin Feng heard Lu Zhonglan, he calmly nodded. He, of course, knew what Lu Zhonglan had meant. He was hoping that no more blood of the people he cared about would be spilt, so he wanted Lin Feng to forget about what had happened with Duan Tianlang. If Lin Feng continued his verbal attacks against Duan Tianlang, the blood of the soldiers would inevitably flow. Lu Zhonglan didn't want such a thing to happen again. When Lin Feng saw Lu Zhonglan leave, he sighed. What a sorrowful hero. Duan Wuya was relieved to see that Lu Tsonglan had accepted. Immediately after, he said, Lin Feng, with your strategy, you managed to kill hundreds of thousands of enemy soldiers and repel their army. Then, you traveled into the enemy country to rescue the princess and returned her safely to the imperial city. General Lu Tsonglan just granted you the title of officer. I, as a representative of the imperial family, also confer Lin Feng a title, the title of Marquis, and your fief is Yangzhou City. Marquis of Yangzhou City. Marquis of Yangzhou City. The crowd was stupefied. Officer of the Qi Xie troops and Marquis of the fief of Yangzhou. In Shuiyu, those who had the most power after the imperial family were imperial ministers, and directly below them was Marquis. Some Marquis reigned over a village while some others reigned over a city. Owning a city was required to be considered as a true Marquis. Even though Yangzhou City wasn't very big, Duan Wuya's move was of the highest significance. He had made Lin Feng into a true Marquis. He had given Lin Feng incredible power. From that moment, Yangzhou City belonged to Lin Feng. Every inhabitant of Yangzhou was under Lin Feng's control, and all of their lives belonged to him. At that moment, a realization flashed through Lin Feng's eyes. He realized that Duan Wuya was honoring his promise. He had hoped that Lin Feng would perform meritorious acts during the war so that he could provide him with a social status. Now that Lin Feng was back in the imperial city, Duan Wuya was granting Lin Feng with a social status, and at the same, he was directly implying that Lin Feng was part of his faction. Thank you, Your Highness, said Lin Feng in a low voice. Of course, he wasn't going to refuse Duan Wuya's offer. There were many strong cultivators in Shuiyu, and Lin Feng still wasn't extremely strong. Receiving such an opportunity was a great chance for him. Don't get too happy yet. My father still has to make the final decision, said Duan Wuya while smiling warmly. Even though he was saying that, the whole crowd knew that everything was already set in stone. The final decision was just part of the process. Once the prince announced it, it was confirmed. If Duan Wuya wasn't sure about what he said, he wouldn't have said it in front of everyone. If the decision was overturned, he would have lost face. Lin Feng slightly nodded and remained silent. Duan Wuya turned towards Duan Xinyi and said, Xinyi, that guy, Meng Chong, did he really attack you? Was Meng Gufeng really there, on the gate with him? Duan Xinyi looked at Duan Wuya and nodded. Yes, everybody saw us outside of the imperial city. Meng Chong gave the troops the orders to kill Lin Feng and me. Besides, Meng Gufeng didn't want to allow me entry into the imperial city. Duan Wuya slightly nodded and said, Meng Gufeng was an officer and he committed a terrible crime. He illegally granted power to Meng Chong, who then used that power to try and kill my little sister. A soldier of the imperial city, who wants to kill the princess, deserves death. When the crowd heard Duan Wuya, they were surprised. Meng Gufeng and Meng Chong had already died. Why was Duan Wuya still talking about them? But at the moment, when they were asking themselves questions, Duan Wuya looked at Meng Han. The crowd was wondering what was going on. Meng Han's heart also started accelerating. He had the impression that something ominous was going to happen. A moment before, he had made Duan Wuya lose face by supporting Duan Tianlang. Officer Meng Gufeng attempted to assassinate the princess. Even though he is dead already, his brother Meng Han is still the officer of the Imperial Guards. I think that it is necessary to carry out a full investigation. Meng Han, you are already not an appropriate choice to occupy the function of officer of the Imperial Guards. When Duan Wuya finished talking, people's hearts were racing. The second prince was extremely fierce and harsh. Meng Han couldn't refute his argument. Meng Han's heart violently pounded as well. He wanted Duan Wuya to die for finding such an excuse to dismiss him. Meng Han turned around and looked at Duan Tianlang, who remained silent. Duan Tianlang was already in a critical situation himself. Duan Wuya hadn't decided what he wanted to do with him, otherwise, he wouldn't remain so polite. At that moment though, he didn't want to anger the second prince. The second prince was fierce, intrepid and tough. Meng Han saw that Duan Tianlang remained silent. He then said to Duan Wuya, "Your Highness, Meng Gufeng committed crimes, but what does that have to do with me? Even though he was my brother, I know nothing about that. How can you blame me and dismiss me from my function as an officer of the Imperial Guard?" "Meng Han, I didn't say that it had something to do with you either, but Meng Gufeng was involved in an assassination attempt on the princess of the imperial family. I, as the second prince, must investigate. It is my duty as I don't understand the whole situation. Wait until we have gathered all of the facts with a thorough investigation, and if you are absolutely clean, you will be able to return to your post as an officer of the Imperial Guard." Duan Wuya's argument sounded quite logical, but everybody knew that Meng Han was being relieved of his position as an officer of the Imperial Guard. It would be extremely difficult for him to hold such a high position again. It was actually almost impossible. "I, Meng Han, am innocent," said Meng Han coldly. He was standing tall and upright and fixedly staring at Duan Wuya. At that moment, he was still in a position of power, with the Imperial Guards obeying his orders. If the second prince wanted to attack him, it wouldn't be that easy. However, as time went on, people would come to assist him. Meng Han, how audacious! How does he even have the courage to talk to the second prince that way? "It seems like there are some people from above supporting Meng Han," whispered the people far away in the crowd. Meng Han had immediately contradicted Duan Wuya, in front of everybody. "Hee hee." Duan Wuya laughed, his smile hadn't disappeared. "Meng Han, what you mean is that I am groundlessly dismissing you from your functions. Do you mean that you will not obey my orders? You, Meng Han, intend to do what? Keep your function as an officer by force? How could I, Meng Han, not obey the second prince's order? It's just that the function of officer of the Imperial Guard is very important. Apart from me, nobody else can do it. Besides, the Imperial Guards also consider me as their brothers. It is not their wish to see anyone replace me." "Is that so?" asked Duan Wuya with an evil smile on his face which made Meng Han's facial expression change. "CRR, CRR." A faint and subtle sound spread in the air. Meng Han was violently shaking and breathing heavily. Blood sprayed from his mouth. Not only was Meng Han's heart pounding, but the crowd were also on edge from watching this. Blood was unceasingly flowing from Meng Han's mouth. He lowered his head and only saw the tip of a silver spear that had pierced through his chest from behind. The Imperial Guards were like his brothers and didn't want to see anyone replace him. His voice was still resonating in people's minds, but the reality was much harsher. Meng Han moved his body. He wanted to turn around, but the spear was not moving. Suddenly, a deadly energy penetrated his body and destroyed his organs. The crowd was astonished. Blood sprayed out from his mouth and his lifeless body slowly collapsed onto the floor. After Meng Han collapsed, the high-ranking soldiers who were behind him were absolutely calm. Their expression hadn't changed whatsoever. They all looked extremely serene and peaceful. There were about 30 guards in this high-ranking group. They were all young, but their coldness was enough to make other people's hearts feel a tinge of fear. Meng Han's brother, Meng Gufeng, attempted to kill the princess. Meng Han refused to admit it and kept contradicting Your Highness over and over again. I, Yu the non-commissioned officer of the Imperial Guards, killed him for his insubordination. Please forgive me for taking action, Your Highness. Yu was kneeling down and bowing in front of Duan Wuya. Behind Yu, the army of Imperial Guards remained motionless. All of them looked calm and serene as if they were not surprised at all. They almost agreed with how the events had played out. Everybody was astonished by the coldness of that scene. Meng Gufeng had been plotting against my little sister and wanted to kill her. Meng Han hasn't expressed any regret at all and refused to acknowledge his brother's crime. Besides, he was extremely rude to me. Even though Yu killed Meng Han and that is a crime, it is still a sign of loyalty and devotion to the imperial family. Duan Wuya was speaking slowly and then continued, "Today, Meng Han died, but it is required for the guards to have an officer. You are, for the time being, promoted to the position of officer of the Imperial Guards." "Thank you, Your Highness," said Yu while respectfully bowing and kneeling down. Immediately after, he stood up. At the same time, the high-ranking Imperial Guards behind him also bowed respectfully and shouted in unison, "His Highness is wise and kind, we thank you for our new officer." All the ordinary Imperial Guards were stupefied and were just realizing what had happened. They then slowly knelt down and shouted in unison, "His Highness. Thank you for our new officer." These extremely loud voices were resonating through the crowd. People's hearts were violently pounding, they were unable to calm down. How fierce and powerful. Duan Wuya could control the Imperial Guards so easily, his methods were intense. If the crowd didn't know that Yu was one of Duan Wuya's factions, all sorts of rumors would be spread. Lin Feng calmly smiled at Duan Wuya but was still feeling a bit cold in his heart. Duan Wuya was dangerous, extremely dangerous. "Everybody, stand up," said Duan Wuya while waving his hand. The ones who were still kneeling down slowly stood up, but for a long time, they were unable to calm down. A position as important as officer of the Imperial Guard had been transferred so easily. "Everybody, stand up," said Duan Wuya while waving his hand. The ones who were still kneeling down slowly stood up, but for a long time, they were unable to calm down. A position as important as officer of the Imperial Guard had been transferred so easily. Duan Wuya's opinion was that there was nothing special or surprising about it. It was as if the Imperial Guard didn't mean that much to him. "Yu, now you are the officer of the Imperial Guard, you know what you have to do." Yu nodded and bowed while saying, "Your Highness, I will leave with the guards now and patrol the streets to ensure the residents' safety." "All right, you can go," said Duan Wuya while waving. Immediately after, several tens of thousands of guards left, only those from Duanren City, who were surrounding the death sentence stage, were still there. Nobody could threaten them. Duan Tianlang and his son's facial expression was growing more and more hideous. Duan Tianlang had wanted to kill Lu Tsanglan, but at the crucial moment, Lin Feng had appeared with Duan Xinyi. They had rushed over and killing Lu Tsanglan had become impossible, he was going to stay alive. Besides, Duan Han wanted to marry Lu Fei. Using Lu Tsanglan's life as a bargaining tool, he had been blackmailing her. If she wasn't willing to engage in a relationship with him, he would turn his back on Lu Tsanglan, who would then die. Lu Fei hated him and didn't want to become his wife, she rejected his offer. What was making them boil with envy was that Lin Feng had become a marquis, the officer of the Qi Xia army, and had obtained the control of his hometown. Besides, Duan Wuya had also appointed a new person to be the officer of the Imperial Guards. It was a crushing defeat for them. All these things had happened because of one person, Lin Feng. At that moment, Duan Tianlang and his son were looking at Lin Feng with ice-cold glares. Lin Feng turned around and looked at them. His face was filled with killing intent and he made no attempt to hide it. "Lin Feng, we're stopping this for the time being," said Duan Wuya in a low voice when he sensed Lin Feng was ready to kill. Duan Tianlang had a high status, he was a noble from the Duan clan. Duan Tianlang was a member of the imperial family. Killing him isn't as easy as killing Meng Han, it would need a justified reason. Lin Feng had no excuse to kill Duan Tianlang at that moment. "Yes, I understand, Your Highness. What happened today is over, for the time being," said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. The soldiers sighed. Duan Tianlang would stay alive after all he had done, even though the blood of so many people was on his hands. Of course, they weren't blaming Lin Feng. What he had done wasn't easy at all. If Lin Feng hadn't been there, Lu Tsanglan would have been executed and they would have been doomed as well, as they would have been considered as a rebel army. But At that moment, Lin Feng turned around and looked at Duan Tianlang and Duan Han. He said, "What happened today is over for now, but last time, Duan Tianlang brought an army to exterminate the Yunhai sect. The Yunhai sect turned into a bloodbath. I, Lin Feng, as a disciple of the Yunhai sect, need to get my revenge because of the hatred left deep within my heart. Therefore, the enmity between Duan Tianlang and me will never end without his death." The crowd was stupefied. It wasn't over. Lin Feng used to be a disciple of the Yunhai sect, therefore, he had an excuse for not letting past grievances be settled. So that's how it is. Duan Tianlang exterminated the Yunhai sect, of which Lin Feng used to be a disciple. His hatred for Duan Tianlang should be endless. How could he forget such a thing? Duan Tianlang is his enemy and the hatred is too deeply engraved in his heart. There is no solution. With such justification, Duan Wuya cannot say anything either. People in the crowd were all trying to understand the situation. Then, they saw Lin Feng turn around. He looked at the troops and at Ren Qingquang in particular. "Officer Ren, sorry for causing you trouble, please take the troops out of the city and wait for me there. I have something to do here, I will come to you when I'm done," said Lin Feng to Ren Qingquang. Immediately, many started shouting from within the army. "We're not leaving, the officer is here, we're staying. Yes, we will stay with our officer." The Qi Xie troops were shouting in protest. The crowd was surprised. Lin Feng was so young, his troops were already extremely loyal and devoted to him, these feelings were already deeply engraved into their hearts. Surprisingly, even before Lu Zhonglan had assigned Lin Feng as their new officer, they have already regarded him as their leader. "Get the hell out of here, all of you. If you don't hurry, I'll get angry," said Lin Feng sounding ice cold. The troops were all a bit surprised. "Officer Ren, sorry for the inconvenience." Lin Feng coldly looked at the troops and then at Ren Qingquang. If they stayed with him, it would be the same as continuing to talk about the problems that happened on that day. Even though in itself, it was the same, it was no longer about the grievance between Duan Tianlang and the Qi Xie army. Lin Feng needed to justify his reason for revenge because Duan Wuya was there. Duan Wuya had freed Lu Zhonglan, giving him the title of imperial minister, he had given Lin Feng the title of marquis. All these things were supposed to make them stop pursuing issues caused by the war. If Lin Feng continued, Duan Wuya would not tolerate it. Therefore, at that moment, he gave a new reason: the Yunhai sect had been destroyed, the troops thus had to leave as it did not involve them. "All right," said Ren Qingquang. He perfectly understood Lin Feng. Ren Qingquang shouted, "Troops, listen to your orders, leave the imperial city immediately." After saying that, Ren Qingquang turned around and slowly left. The troops, even though they were doing it against their own will, still obeyed Lin Feng's order and galloped away. Immediately after, Ren Qingquang also left with them. A short time later, all the troops had left the imperial city. The area seemed deserted. In the entire area, the only ones left were Lin Feng, Meng Qing, the Celestial Sword Battalion, Duan Wuya, Duan Xianyi, Duan Tianlang and his son. At that moment, Duan Tianlang narrowed his eyes and evilly stared at Lin Feng. That boy wasn't going to give up. Duan Wuya hadn't thought that Lin Feng would be so stubborn either, but Lin Feng had mentioned the extermination of the Yunhai sect and his status as a disciple of the Yunhai sect. Of course, his heart was filled with hatred. Lin Feng shouted Duan Wuya at that moment. Lin Feng turned around and immediately heard him say, "Lin Feng, Duan Tianlang is an imperial family member, his title of being an imperial family member is higher than that of marquis, more respectable, you cannot attack him." "I know," said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. Duan Wuya was a bit surprised, since Lin Feng knew, what else did he want? "Your Highness, Duan Tianlang is a member of the imperial family and your uncle, his status is respectable and extremely high, I will obviously not attack him," said Lin Feng sounding detached. The crowd didn't understand him at all. But then they heard Lin Feng continue, however, back in the past, Duan Tianlang had brought his son along, Duan Han, who helped him to slaughter the Yunhai sect, my sect. Duan Han is extremely arrogant and thinks he is better than me, he even said that I wouldn't withstand a single attack when we fought. Now, Duan Han, the young noble without an incredible status, is before me. I, Lin Feng, am already a marquis. It should be enough for me to have a battle against him. Right here, right now, I would like him to enlighten me as he said he would in the past. When the crowd heard Lin Feng, they immediately understood who his target was. It wasn't Duan Tianlang but Duan Han. Lin Feng was challenging Duan Han. However, Duan Han, at that moment, would never want to fight. He remembered that day, at the Yunhai sect, he thought that he was extremely strong, but then at that moment, fighting against Lin Feng had become difficult for him. Lin Feng had always been stronger than Duan Han. Duan Han didn't have the courage to fight against Lin Feng anymore. Duan Han felt awkward and was staring Lin Feng. He had a hideous facial expression. How was he supposed to accept Lin Feng's challenge? We refuse. Duan Han and I have things to do, we have no time. Said Duan Tianlang sounding cold and detached. Things to do, said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. Duan Tianlang, when you went to destroy the Yunhai sect, did you ask the people of the Yunhai sect if they would accept? Duan Tianlang narrowed his eyes. That was ridiculous, how could they accept? Duan Tianlang, when the princess was taken away, your troops blocked my path and tried to kill me, did you ask me if I had the time? Lin Feng ignored Duan Tianlang and continued, besides, Duan Tianlang, when you and your son, set a trap in order to kill me which led to the death of hundreds of thousands from the Shuiyu army, then deserted the battlefield in order to rush back and try to have Lu Zonglan executed, did you ask everybody else if they accepted? Lin Feng's voice was growing louder and louder. A cold and deadly energy emerged from his body. Lin Feng, who was always calm, was furious. How powerful. What Lin Feng meant is that there was no choice, he was fighting Duan Han regardless of who stood in his way. Lin Feng had an evil smile on his face and was staring at Duan Han. He then said in an ice-cold tone, Duan Han, back in the days, at the Yunhai sect, you considered everyone beneath your attention but our battle was not allowed an end. You have to treat a man as he treated you, today, we finish our battle. When Lin Feng finished talking, he started walking forward. That battle could happen because of a single justifiable excuse, it wasn't about wanting to battle, it was about finishing their unfinished battle. In the world of cultivation, Lin Feng was always moving closer to his goal of soaring in the clouds. Try if you dare, shouted Duan Tianlang furiously. He then started walking forward and a deadly qi emerged from his body. Lin Feng surprisingly wanted to kill Duan Han, his son, how could Duan Tianlang accept that? Try if you dare, shouted Duan Tianlang furiously. He then started walking forward and a deadly qi emerged from his body. Lin Feng surprisingly wanted to kill Duan Han, his son, how could Duan Tianlang accept that? Stop, shouted a furious Meng Qing. Ice qi and force invaded the atmosphere. Meng Qing took a few steps and landed in front of Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang also had the strength of the Xian Qi layer. If Lin Feng wanted to kill Duan Han, how could he resist to Duan Tianlang? Obviously, Meng Qing had to get involved, Lin Feng didn't need to say anything, that was obvious. Gotcha. Even more ice appeared in the atmosphere. Duan Tianlang was surprised, his facial expression was hideous. An incredible quantity of sword energy emerged from his body. Duan Tianlang had a blood spirit and had awakened the strength within his blood, but that strength was too weak, therefore, he was also using his sword spirit. Duan Han also had a sword spirit. Dual spirit. A long sword appeared which pointed towards the sky. His sword spirit and the sword in his hand seemed to be in perfect symbiosis, both as sharp as the other. Besides, at that moment, Lin Feng was slowly walking towards Duan Han. Each and every step that Lin Feng took made Duan Han's heartbeat grew faster. Duan Han didn't stop retreating backwards. Back in the past, at the Yunhai sect, you were high-spirited, vigorous and daring. Today, you are as scared a cowardly mutt who keeps on flinching, you don't even dare to fight. Lin Feng said these words jokingly. He wasn't in a hurry to kill Duan Han. He was convinced that Duan Tianlang would also remember Meng Qing and her strength, allowing him to see his son, Duan Han, get killed without being able to do anything in retaliation. Lin Feng wanted to make Duan Tianlang understand that, back in the days, he had the power to bully Lin Feng, but now, Lin Feng could slowly kill his son right in front of him and he would not be able to lift a finger. He would show him how cruel he could truly be and make his son suffer in his place. When the people saw Lin Feng slowly walking towards Duan Han, their hearts also started beating faster. When Duan Wuxia saw that Lin Feng wanted to kill Duan Han, an offspring of the Duan family, he surprisingly didn't try to block him, which meant that he tacitly agreed. Die! Lin Feng was getting nearer and nearer. Duan Tianlang shouted loudly while his sword slashed through the atmosphere. An endless quantity of sword chi appeared and slashed through the world of ice. The sound of sword energy clashing against ice energy filled the air. Ice diamond, said Meng Qing in a low voice. She waved her hand and an ice crystal appeared and froze Duan Tianlang's sword entirely. Lin Feng was very near to Duan Han. A sharp and deadly energy completely enveloped Duan Han's body. It was filled with deadly qi. Under that deadly energy, Duan Han didn't even have the courage to resist. Lin Feng's aura of a death god sufficed to make him tremble in fear. Could it be that you are afraid now? When you were at the top of the cliff face, you were cold-bloodedly watching the Yunhai sect members get slaughtered, you were feeling comfortable and satisfied, right? When you and your father got a few 100,000 soldiers killed, didn't you have the feeling that your plan was a great success? Lin Feng's voice sounded evil and its coldness invaded Duan Han's heart. Arf! Duan Tianlang shouted like an animal, abandoned his sword and jumped towards Duan Han. Frozen heart, said Meng Qing in a low voice. Duan Tianlang started shaking violently. He had the feeling that his heart was being completely frozen. Blood started flowing from his mouth. But Duan Tianlang didn't pay attention to that, all that mattered to him was his son couldn't die. Oh, you came, said Lin Feng with an ice-cold smile on the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, his silhouette disappeared, he was absorbed into the void of darkness. Die, said a voice coming from the void. The crowd saw, in the middle of that emptiness, a cross appeared. That cross was resplendent and dazzling to the eyes. The cross turned into a sanguinary sword. On Duan Han's neck there was a small cross, a small bloody cross. Duan Tianlang stopped moving. His mouth was wide open. He was just feeling infinitely cold as he was blankly staring at his son, Duan Han, who slightly lifted his head to look at his father. Duan Tianlang could see the cross-shaped mark on his neck and the blood endlessly gushing out from it. Duan Han, shouted Duan Tianlang with a husky voice. He was shaking from head to toe. He grabbed his son and hugged him tightly. He saw his son's lips, which were moving, but he couldn't speak a word as he was drowning in his own blood. At that moment, his son collapsed in his arms. Cough, cough. Duan Tianlang coughed and blood was forced out of his mouth. He looked deathly pale. His son was dead, he had been killed by Lin Feng and died in his arms. At the moment, when he had almost reached his son, Lin Feng forced him to watch his son drown in his own blood. Invisible like a shadow, invisible and silent, that was the deadly cross shadow. It hurts, doesn't it, Duan Tianlang? Back then, at the Yunhai sect, when you slaughtered all those people, or after when you set a trap for a few 100,000 soldiers, you were not thinking about their friends and their families, you also didn't think about the pain that they would have to go through, said Lin Feng, who was standing behind Duan Tianlang watching the scene. Lin Feng, furiously shouted Duan Tianlang while releasing a deadly energy. You don't need to shout, I know that you wish you could hack me into a million pieces, I understand your hatred because I feel that hatred inside me, and my hatred is much more terrifying than yours, said Lin Feng sounding calm. He then continued, now, it is between you and me. If you have an opportunity to kill me, feel free to try. Because if, someday, I have the opportunity to kill you, I will unleash my hatred and show you no mercy. While talking, Lin Feng turned around, his silhouette flickered and he moved back to his original position. Immediately after, he said to Duan Wuya, Your Highness, I am now taking my leave. Duan Wuya slightly nodded and said, Lin Feng, I will be waiting for your return in the lovesick forest by the lake. Lin Feng muttered something to himself, but immediately after nodded and said, all right. Lin Feng then waved. Those who were wearing bronze masks, even though their faces were covered, all had an aura of satisfaction, they looked inspired and enthusiastic. Many of them used to be Yunhai sect disciples. Duan Tianlang and Duan Han had annihilated the Yunhai sect, which was why they had the slave marks carved into their faces. Duan Tianlang and Duan Han were their sworn enemies. When they saw Lin Feng kill Duan Han and force Duan Tianlang into such a situation, how could they not feel satisfied? They coldly glanced at Duan Tianlang, then turned around and followed Lin Feng. Then, altogether, they galloped away. Duan Tianlang was showing no sign of indignation or anger, he didn't do anything irrational. Meng Qing had already badly injured him. While Meng Qing was there, it was impossible for him to kill Lin Feng. If he attacked Lin Feng, Meng Qing would continue to inflict injuries. Who was that beautiful girl, whose face was covered with a fine veil, and why was she following Lin Feng? She was extremely strong. Lin Feng, if I, Duan Tianlang, don't kill you, my life will not be worth living, said Duan Tianlang while feeling that his son's skin was growing colder and more lifeless. He uttered a long and mournful cry. A strong wind blew over the area, everybody was feeling cold. They were looking at the silhouettes slowly disappearing. They all understood that Xueyu had an incredible young genius. He had confined enemy troops in a city, set it on fire, and killed hundreds of thousands of them. He had galloped over an endless distance, saved the princess and brought her back alive, he had killed an officer of the imperial city, he had saved Lu Tsonglan who was about to get executed by Duan Tianlang, he had become a marquis and possessed a city, and then he killed Duan Han in front of his father's eyes. Lin Feng's name was definitely going to be famous in the entire country. Outside of the imperial city, the army had gathered. At that moment, the city gate was open, a group of armored horses passed through it. Immediately, the crowd looked towards the gate. Lin Feng looked at the whole crowd, he was a bit surprised, he looked startled, and moved forward. Besides, 3 silhouettes rushed out to welcome him. These 3 people were precisely, Officer Ren Qing Kuang, Officer of the Middle Troops, Officer Feng Yuhan, Officer of the Left Troops, and Officer Lei Qing Tian, Officer of the Right Troops. Is Uncle Lu in charge of all these troops now? Asked Lin Feng to the 3 officers. At that moment, outside of the city, all the soldiers were wearing red armor, riding Qi Xia armored horses, they were all Qi Xia troops. Besides, the other officers were not leading them. Nobody said anything. At that moment, the troops looked towards Lin Feng, and all jumped down from their horses and then all knelt down. We, the Qi Xia troops, welcome our new officer, said the troops in unison, extremely loudly, making the ground shake. That drew the attention of many people, even of some who were far away. Lin Feng was astonished as well. Everyone stand up. What on earth are you doing? Said Lin Feng. Lin Feng. Ren Qing Kuang galloped towards Lin Feng and then said, Lin Feng, the general dismissed these troops. Dismissed the troops? Asked Lin Feng a bit surprised. What was Lu Zhonglan doing? But apart from a small minority of them who wanted to follow the general, everybody refused to leave. He only brought those troops who would only follow him back to Duanren city, leaving us behind to wait for you. Wait for me. Indeed, wait for you, said Ren Qingquang in a calm and solemn way. He then slowly said, Lin Feng, the general said there was no point staying in Duanren city because if MOU tried to attack again, there would be no force left to resist them. Therefore, the general told the whole army to stay here. Lin Feng, now, you are a marquis, you are the officer of the Qi Xie troops, and since you own the fief of Yangzhou city, you can have your own personal army. The general told us to stay with you and pledge our loyalty to you rather than the country of Shuiyu. As your personal army, we can go to Yangzhou city, your fief. From now on, the Qi Xie army will listen to your orders, as well as ours. Ren Qingquang's words made Lin Feng's heart pound. Lu Zhonglan was giving the elite troops of Shuiyu, the Qi Xie army, as well as its 3 officers, to him as his own private army. In any case, he was now a marquis, he had the space to accommodate his own personal army in Yangzhou city. Then, the Yunhai sect. Sigh. Lin Feng raised his head to the sky and took a deep breath. He looked at Ren Qingquang and said, I agree. In the lovesick forest, it was as usual, misty, there was a thick fog floating above the ground. It looked like heaven on earth. In the lovesick forest, it was as usual, misty, there was a thick fog floating above the ground. It looked like heaven on earth. In the pavilion, 2 people were drinking lovesick alcohol. Duan Wuya was one of them. The other one was a smart, elegant, handsome and spirited man. That man looked natural and unrestrained. At that moment, he was still wearing his armor, the armor of an officer. He looked majestic. It was the officer of the Imperial Guards, Yu Ji. What do you think, said Duan Wuya sounding indifferent while sipping on his glass of lovesick alcohol. Your Highness, before the battle, I had already secured the situation, all the Imperial Guards are now in our faction. Now, it is only about consolidating and purging. From today, the guards are yours, Your Highness. Oh, said Duan Wuya while lightly nodding. It was impossible to see if he was happy or worried. He was expressionless and uncommunicative. At that moment, someone wearing black clothes was approaching and arrived at the pavilion. He slightly bowed in front of the second prince and said, Your Highness. Nan Shan, sit down, said Duan Wuya while waving and smiling softly and warmly. Nan Shan slightly nodded and immediately sat down opposite Yu Ji. He said, Your Highness, Lu Zhonglan went back to Duanren city but he gave his army to Lin Feng. He wants them to stay with him. Great news. Duan Wuya paused and then said, while nodding, maybe then he'll be able to use them for a good cause. Yu Ji, the Imperial Guards need you, you should go back, said Duan Wuya to Yu Ji. Yu Ji slightly nodded and took leave. Immediately after, he left the pavilion. Nan Shan, while looking at Yu Ji's silhouette leave, said, Your Highness, congratulations on gaining the Imperial Guards. Duan Wuya shook his head and said, Today's greatest achievement is not the Imperial Guards. Duan Tianlang, Meng Han and the others didn't care about Your Highness and worked against Your Highness. Meng Han is already dead, Duan Tianlang is mourning over his son's death, the others should be perfectly aware of the situation as well, said Nan Shan. Duan Wuya was usually always so kind and soft. Because of that, many people forgot that he was also extremely powerful. Nan Shan had been following Duan Wuya for many years, he perfectly understood that the people who underestimated Duan Wuya would end up in tragic situations. Even the extremely strong, powerful, ruthless and cruel high official, the crown prince, didn't dare look down on his brother. That's not how it is, said Duan Wuya while shaking his head. Nan Shan was a bit surprised and immediately said, Lin Feng. Indeed, that's Lin Feng. Duan Wuya, while slightly nodding his head, said, everybody now knows that Lin Feng is one from my faction. Even though the Imperial Guards protect the city and constitute an important provision of force, in comparison with these troops, they are still too weak. These troops are my goal. Duan Tianlang is too arrogant and looks down on everyone else, he's a moron. Surprisingly, he dared touch Duan Xinyi, he doesn't know, but from that moment, he doomed himself. He still thinks that there is a chance with my brother, but he's nothing but a dead man. Duan Wuya, at that moment, didn't look like a friendly person. His eyes were filled with sharpness, brutality, and coldness. He hadn't been worried about Duan Xinyi being kidnapped by MOU troops, they wouldn't have killed Duan Xinyi, but he hadn't thought that Duan Tianlang would try to kill Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi on the way back. Nan Shan could sense Duan Wuya's coldness. He knew that if Duan Tianlang was still alive, but it was only a matter of time. What Duan Tianlang didn't understand was that he wouldn't be able to achieve his aim if the princess died, he would be doomed. No matter the winner, Duan Wudao or Duan Wuya, Dan Tianlang would have been killed for murdering Duan Xinyi. Duan Tianlang still thought that Duan Wudao would agree with him killing the princess. Maybe if Duan Tianlang had the princess blood on his hands, Duan Wudao wouldn't say anything initially, but in the end, he would end up like everyone else who had committed a serious crime. Such things were typical in political affairs. They were doing things behind the curtains, in secret, and things were difficult to understand. It was difficult to see where each piece was placed on the board. Nan Shan, you tell me, how can I get these troops, said Duan Wuya. Nan Shan was surprised, shook his head and said, I don't know. Nan Shan knew what Duan Wuya meant, the most mysterious army of Shuiyu, the Snow Dragon Guards. The Snow Dragon Guard unit was composed of the best cultivators within Shuiyu. It is absolutely normal for you not to know, said Duan Wuya while smiling, the old man will, sooner or later, stop reigning over the country, allowing my brother and me to struggle for power and influence. Leading the ministers and so on will not be a problem, but the one who manages to obtain the Snow Dragon troops, will be the real emperor. Nan Shan remained silent. He didn't know much about the Snow Dragon troops apart from the fact that they were extremely strong. At that moment, Duan Wuya raised his head and gazed into the distance. Your Highness, I will leave now, said Nan Shan while getting up, but Duan Wuya shook his head and said, no need, stay here. In the distance, Lin Feng had appeared. He was slowly and silently walking towards the pavilion, like a leaf floating on the wind, as if he was in perfect fusion with the earth. The energy which was emerging from his body was mysterious. Duan Wuya was a bit surprised. What is Lin Feng's cultivation level now, thought Duan Wuya. Duan Wuya couldn't sense Lin Feng's cultivation level, but it seemed like since he had gone to Duanren City, he had changed a lot. Your Highness, said Lin Feng, who had arrived at the pavilion a moment later. Duan Wuya nodded. Lin Feng, hurry up and sit down, said Duan Wuya looking friendly again. He once again looked easy to get along with. He seemed to be a warm and soft person. Lin Feng slightly nodded and sat down opposite Nan Shan. This time, when Lin Feng entered into the forest, he didn't feel strange at all, it was obviously thanks to Duan Wuya. Your Highness, you asked me to personally come to the lovesick forest, what do you need to speak to me about? Asked Lin Feng. Lin Feng, you don't need to be so meticulous with me. Above all, I invited you to show you my gratitude for having brought Duan Xinyi back safely. Duan Wuya poured some alcohol into Lin Feng's glass and immediately downed his glass. Lin Feng grabbed the glass of alcohol and brought it to his lips. While drinking, he said in a low voice, Your Highness, the princess was missing, it was my duty to bring her back. Lin Feng continued drinking the lovesick alcohol and a mysterious feeling invaded his heart. How's the feeling? Asked Duan Wuya while smiling. Even though I can't appreciate alcohol that much, I know that lovesick alcohol is unique and original, replied Lin Feng while smiling. What I want to ask you is if Xinyi appeared in your heart while drinking lovesickness, said Duan Wuya with a smile yet not a smile on his face. Lin Feng, it seems that you do not have the same feelings as my sister. Lin Feng was a bit shocked and then smiled wryly. That alcohol was supposed to make a person's most loved one appear in one's heart. In Lin Feng's heart, except for the image of a pure and holy silhouette wearing long white clothes, there was also a small part which belonged to the princess. He remembered that day at the Z government, Duan Xinyi had really moved him to the extent that her silhouette appeared in his mind. Besides, in his heart, there was another girl, wearing red clothes. She was gentle and demure. Lin Feng was a bit perplexed. He believed in true love. Alright, this also none of my business, Lin Feng. I officially granted you a title, you can now officially claim it. You can also go to Yangzhou City to get your fief. When Duan Wuya saw that Lin Feng remained silent, he also didn't insist, he instead changed the subject. At the end of the year, soon the annual New Year's holiday will be upon us. I will go back at that moment, replied Lin Feng. He and his father had been expelled out of the Lin clan, so it was better to wait for a complete year to be over before returning. Maybe he would be able to arrive for the Lin clan annual meeting too. Alright, in a few days I will send people to the Celestial Academy to come and pick you up to officially to receive your title, said Duan Wuya. Alright, said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. Your Highness, I would like to ask you for help. I need your connections to help me find someone. Tell me who, said Duan Wuya while nodding. My father, Lin Hai, said Lin Feng slowly. Lin Hai said that he was going to the imperial city, but many things had happened to Lin Feng and he didn't even know where his father was. Lin Feng had no news, so he hoped that Duan Wuya would be able to help him as the city was extremely large. Your father, Lin Hai, said Duan Wuya looking pensive, and then immediately nodded and said, Alright, Lin Feng, leave it to me. Your Highness, thank you, said Lin Feng while nodding and saluting Duan Wuya with a cupped hand salute. If you, Your Highness, don't have anything else to add, I will take my leave. Alright, you can go, said Duan Wuya while nodding and not preventing Lin Feng from leaving. Lin Feng abruptly left the lovesick forest. Outside of the lovesick forest, there was a pure and holy-looking silhouette waiting for him. When Lin Feng came out, they left together. In the peach orchard of the Celestial Academy, leaves were floating in the air like beautiful women dancing in the wind. In the peach orchard of the Celestial Academy, leaves were floating in the air like beautiful women dancing in the wind. The melody of the zither was floating on the wind just like the leaves of the peach trees. The melody could bring peace to anyone's heart. In the middle of that elegant pavilion, a graceful hand was floating over the strings of the zither. The melody was enchanting. Lin Feng, just like a diligent student, was sitting on the ground with his eyes closed respectfully listening to the melody. At that moment, Lin Feng's eyes were closed and he was breathing peacefully. His body was surrounded by a cloud of qi. If people had been there, they would find it very mysterious, but there was nobody in sight. For Lin Feng, it seemed like there was nothing but the earth. He was in fusion with the earth. Yan Yuping Sheng was a Xian Qi layer cultivator. If Lin Feng hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have never thought that Yan Yuping Sheng, the teacher who was also the examiner for the military students' entrance exam, had such terrifying strength and power. While his fingers were floating over the strings of the zither, he could disintegrate soldiers and make them disappear into nothingness like dust. Lin Feng felt endless respect for Yan Yuping Sheng. He was extremely powerful. Lin Feng held him in awe and veneration. After a long time, the sound of the zither stopped. Yan Yuping Sheng raised his head and looked at Lin Feng, who, as before, seemed calm and serene, as if he was sound asleep. At that moment, Lin Feng opened his eyes. He had a smile on his face and looked even more handsome. He looked charming and intelligent. Lin Feng, originally, you were not in harmony with your heart's true intentions and that caused a hindrance in your cultivation. That was the reason why I had proposed to play the zither for you and teach you how to play, so that you could wash your heart clean from all the pollution, but now your power of comprehension is stronger than mine and you can already penetrate into the earth fusion dimension. Now, you can continue alone. You need to think, to learn more and understand more about heaven and earth, to the extent that you don't even need to listen to the zither any longer, said Yan Yuping Sheng, who was speaking slowly. The earth fusion dimension was extremely difficult to reach. Since Lin Feng had managed to break through to that complex cultivation layer, after that, breaking through to the different layers would be a piece of cake, at least until he reached the Tian Qi layer. It wouldn't be like Yan Yuping Sheng, for whom it was very difficult to reach higher levels after having broken through to the Xian Qi layer. He had seen many geniuses, but he had never met someone like Lin Feng. Since Lin Feng could comprehend the earth fusion so well, people who had stronger talent than him were almost non-existent. Teacher, I want to learn how to play the zither, said Lin Feng while slightly smiling. Lin Feng was very sensitive to the arts, especially to the zither. Not only did it help with meditating, but it could also be used to kill. Alright, if you want to learn, I will teach you. Besides, with the power of the earth fusion, it will be easy for you to learn. After a while, you'll play much better than me, said Yan Yuping Sheng. He had faith in Lin Feng. Lin Feng was a once-in-a-lifetime genius. Lin Feng wasn't arrogant at all, he was very humble, he had a strong willpower and determination, besides, he was extremely talented, he was a real treasure. Looking at such an outstanding young man was a pleasure for other people, they felt happy when seeing such a talented genius. Yan Yuping Sheng was particularly happy about the fact that Lin Feng wanted to learn how to play the zither, so Yan Yuping Sheng hoped to see Lin Feng surpass him in the future. Yan Yuping Sheng took out some books and waved his hand, which made them immediately float through the air towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng received the books and listened to Yan Yuping Sheng. Lin Feng, learning how to play the zither requires the ability to listen. Now, you have proven that you are able to listen, you will now need to get to know the zither, you need to learn how to understand it. These books are very easy, but amongst them, there are songs, and there are deadly zither skills as well. You can learn as much as you want, and if there is anything that you don't understand, you can always ask me. Alright, said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. He packed the books and immediately after said to Yan Yuping Sheng, Teacher, I'm leaving. Alright, you can go, said Yan Yuping Sheng while smiling. Lin Feng had said that he was leaving without being scared of offending Yan Yuping Sheng. He wasn't the kind of person who cared about such small things. Yan Yuping Sheng wasn't offended by something like that, on the contrary, he liked Lin Feng this way, honest and carefree. The news that Lin Feng had already come back to the Celestial Academy had quickly spread. Everybody also knew about the great things that he had accomplished during the war. Everybody also knew about the fact that, during the war, on the battlefield there was a song sung by Lin Feng which inspired passion within the troops. Besides, Lin Feng had created this himself, which definitely contributed to his artistic reputation. These days at the Celestial Academy, many people were talking about Lin Feng's achievements, but there were also many people who were talking about Lin Feng's cultivation level. The Celestial Academy had 4 cultivation towers, 3 of them were separated according to the 3 different student paths. There was another one, that one was a great catalyst for cultivation. In that 4th cultivation tower, the pure qi was also the thickest. It was the best tower for practicing cultivation. Besides, anybody could practice in that cultivation tower. Of course, the rule was always the same, one had to be strong enough to obtain a room. At that moment, at the tower, there were some people looking up at the majestic cultivation tower, their eyes were filled with impatience. Not all of them had the power to enter it, they were just admiring it. Yun Shi was a new student at the Celestial Academy, she had broken through to the 2nd Ling Qi layer, which was not bad at all considering that she was only 17, but at the Celestial Academy, that was nothing extraordinary. If only one day I could go into that cultivation tower and practice on the top floor, it would be great, said Yun Shi while looking up at the tall tower. That tower was different from the three others. The pure qi was flowing against the current. At the top of the tower, pure qi was denser than at the bottom. Besides, in that tower, rooms didn't require additional purity stones depending on the floor, and by standing at the bottom, it was possible to see which rooms on which floor were available. Only one glance sufficed. Once someone was in a room, the door closed itself and the pure qi started to circulate. Everybody could see from outside whether there was a free room or not. Each floor only had a single room. That cultivation tower was very special though, it was in the middle of all the other towers and was only used by extremely powerful cultivators. Many people, like Yunxi, were only there to admire it. They all hoped that they would be able to practice cultivation in that tower someday. Yunxi, stop dreaming, joked a girl wearing blue clothes next to her. You should become the girlfriend of one of them and then he would take you inside. Yunxi, last time, didn't Du Gushang show that he was interested in you? You could go with him, said the other girl immediately. She sounded like she was joking in a jealous tone. Du Gushang was one of the 10 ranked disciples of the Celestial Academy, he was ranked 4th. In her thoughts appeared a noble young man. Yunxi shook her head and said, there is someone I like more than Du Gushang, it's Lin Feng. Lin Feng, the girl in blue clothes, was stupefied. She looked at the top of the tower and said, I heard that Lin Feng battled against He Mo last time and that he was extremely strong. Now he is known for his meritorious service during the war, he burnt an entire enemy army of hundreds of thousands alive. It's hard to imagine. He seems to be such a handsome and delicate young man, yet he is so daring and courageous. Besides, he seems he is about the same age as us. Yes, he is now a marquis and owns a city. I heard that he came back to the Celestial Academy. Yunxi had a soft smile on her face. She remembered that day, when Lin Feng battled against He Mo. She would never forget him. He was so young yet so frivolous and courageous. Moron, said the girl next to her. She sounded a bit cold. Lin Feng is a marquis, so what? And even though he battled against He Mo, so what? That's a battle between cultivators of the 5th or 6th Ling Qi layer. However, Du Gushang is the 4th ranked disciple of the Celestial Academy and has already broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer. He is the most majestic man alive, the 4th cultivation room is his, how could Lin Feng rival him? Besides, Du Gushang is also a noble cultivator, he is from the Du Gu clan, which is extremely influential. Yunxi, if you could even have a one-night stand with Du Gushang, that would already be good. Don't expect anything more. Why don't you go and have a one-night stand with him, said Yunxi while frowning and feeling annoyed. You know nothing, if Du Gushang was interested in me, I wouldn't feel offended, said the girl while smiling coldly. Really, said a voice, coming from behind, in the tone of a joke. These girls were surprised. They immediately turned around and saw an arrogant-looking young man. Du Gushang. At that moment, Du Gushang was looking at Yunxi. He said, in the tone of a joke, Lin Feng is nothing. How could he rival me? You dare be interested in him instead of me, you must be blind. The silhouette that Yunxi saw in front of her looked conceited, filled with arrogance, the arrogance of the aristocracy. The silhouette that Yunxi saw in front of her looked conceited, filled with arrogance, the arrogance of the aristocracy. Du Gushang was a rich and powerful person. Du Gushang had heard about Lin Feng's achievements, people were talking about him everywhere. He had even just heard that people were comparing him with Lin Feng. Surprisingly, there were people who dared say that Lin Feng was better than him, like Yunxi. Du Gushang was in a bad mood because of that. What kind of person did this girl think he was? In the entire Celestial Academy, he was always practicing at the top of that tower, nobody dared to take his position, even the second in the ranking, Qiong by Luo and the third when Ao Shui. Du Gushang thought that because they had never had conflicts, he was different and better than them. He respected Lin Feng even less. For him, comparing him with Lin Feng was a humiliation. "Why couldn't I compare you with Lin Feng? As I see it, Lin Feng is better than you," said Yun Shi when she heard that Du Gushang was criticizing Lin Feng, which made Du Gushang furious. "Shut the hell up," he shouted. Smack! At that moment, a loud sound filled the air. Yun Shi had been slapped in the face, not by Du Gushang but by one of the girls who was with her. "Yun Shi, you shut the hell up. Du Gushang is much better than Lin Feng. In front of Du Gushang, Lin Feng is mere trash, a nobody," said the girl extremely coldly. Her words and actions were harsh. When Du Gushang saw that, a big arrogant smile appeared on his face. Indeed, in front of him, Lin Feng was a nobody. At that moment, about 100 meters away from them, a handsome silhouette had appeared. They raised their head and looked at the tall and majestic tower. That young man was precisely the one they were discussing, Lin Feng. Lin Feng then slowly turned his head and looked at Du Gushang and the others. He wanted to go to the cultivation tower and practice there until the end of the year, then he would go back to Yangzhou City, but at that moment, on the road, many people were talking about him. Even at the bottom of the tower, some people were arguing about him. Lin Feng heard every word already, but he couldn't be bothered with them. He didn't feel like going and proving anything to them. They were not worth his time. Many people were talking about him, he couldn't care about everyone, nature would take its course. But at that moment, a girl was protecting his reputation and had been slapped in the face for defending him. She was being humiliated. Lin Feng frowned. "Yun Shi, tonight, I will sleep with you. After that, we won't talk of this again and I will not punish you," said Du Gushang, sounding extremely arrogant. How ridiculous. It was difficult for him to get a woman with his ugly face. He was interested in Yun Shi, but if he had said it clearly, it would have been giving her face, but she surprisingly dared say that she found Lin Feng better than him, therefore, he would teach her the power of a noble over the course of the night. "You." Yun Shi was stupefied. She was looking at that ugly and disgusting guy who wanted to take advantage of her. It would rather be an honor and a favor for her to sleep with him. What a shameless young man. He thought that he could freely humiliate those beneath him. In fact, it was really that way. Du Gushang really thought he could humiliate anyone as he wished, except for a few exceptions. "If you don't reply, I will just help myself," said Du Gushang with a particularly evil smile on his face. Yun Shi's facial expression changed again, she turned deathly pale. What a disgusting and hideous man. However, she also felt powerless. Not only did he have a very high status, but he had also broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer. Relying on his cultivation level and physical strength, he could easily capture her by force and use her as his toy. "Yun Shi, Du Gushang is giving you a great opportunity. You are lucky. You'd be really shameless if you made him lose face," said the mean girl, trying to flatter Du Gushang at the same time. Yun Shi looked even paler. Being sexually assaulted by Du Gushang for an entire night and then abandoned was a stroke of luck. The mean girl was shameless. "You're so young and already so cheap, you are one promiscuous flower," said a voice interrupting them. It sounded cold and detached. It shocked the mean girl. She turned around and immediately saw a handsome young man. She frowned and said, "Who are you talking to?" Last time, she hadn't seen He Mo and Lin Feng's battle, so she couldn't recognize him. "Apart from you, is there another cheap and trashy girl here?" asked Lin Feng in the tone of a joke. With those kind of girls, the only solution was to be harsher than them. The mean girl was stupefied, but Yun Shi suddenly seemed happy. She was blankly staring at the young man in front of her. It was Lin Feng. Surprisingly, it was Lin Feng. Lin Feng had heard her and come to her rescue. As before, he looked natural and unrestrained, but in comparison with before, he looked more mysterious and had a heroic spirit. Du Gushang frowned as well. He didn't recognize Lin Feng either. Last time, during the battle between He Mo and Lin Feng, even though almost everybody had seen it, Du Gushang despised He Mo, so he didn't go to watch his battle. "Why don't you mind your own business?" said Du Gushang, who looked like he was in a joking mood. Lin Feng coldly looked at Du Gushang. Immediately after, he shook his head in disdain. That guy didn't know him yet, he was talking behind his back. Lin Feng despised these types of filthy people and attached no importance to them. Lin Feng looked at the mean girl and said, I understand that for you, a one-night stand with anyone is a stroke of luck, and since it is about giving face, it's clear that you have given a great deal of face and so you are very lucky. Lin Feng was speaking loudly and clearly so that everybody could hear, then, everybody looked at her and laughed. What she said was indeed utterly ridiculous, she was really shameless. I'm talking to you, said Du Gushang, whose voice was sounding colder and colder. Lin Feng surprisingly wasn't paying attention to him. Du Gushang had a prestigious social status, how could Lin Feng ignore him in front of everybody? Lin Feng slowly turned around and said to Du Gushang, Do I know you? Du Gushang was astonished and then smiled coldly, I, of course, don't know you, so you most likely don't know me either. People who know me don't dare ignore me. What's your name? You overestimate yourself, said Lin Feng while smiling, and continued, even though I don't know you, I unfortunately heard your unsavory name, which is normal considering that you show off in front of everybody, Du Gushang. Huh? Du Gushang narrowed his eyes. Lin Feng surprisingly knew who he was but still dared act that way towards him. Since you know who I am, I will show you my methods. Slap your own face, kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times, once you're done, I will forgive all of your mistakes from today. Du Gushang sounded cold and was releasing oppressing energy. His mouth was filled with endless arrogance and coldness. He thought that releasing a little bit of qi and force would be enough to make Lin Feng collapse. However, Lin Feng was calmly standing there, motionless, with a cold smile on his face. His facial expression hadn't changed at all. It actually seemed like Lin Feng hadn't sensed the oppressive energy at all. Slap my own face. Kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times. Lin Feng raised his head and slowly walked towards Du Gushang. Du Gushang was surprised and released more and more of his qi. With so little qi and force, don't you think that you're making a fool of yourself, said Lin Feng, making the whole crowd look on while astonished. What an insane guy, humiliating Du Gushang. Besides, Lin Feng was a military student, so his fellow military students were all excited, especially since Du Gushang was a political student. You can only talk big, said Du Gushang, who released an even stronger energy which pressures the entire atmosphere. Around Lin Feng's body appeared sword qi, it was extremely powerful, his entire body was like a sword, extremely sharp. The crowd was astonished. Their hearts were pounding. These energies were terrifying. Was this the same Lin Feng who had fought against Hamo? Du Gushang also started shaking violently, he was stupefied by Lin Feng. Du Gushang also started shaking violently, he was stupefied by Lin Feng. How is this possible? How could you be so strong? Du Gushang couldn't believe his eyes. He had never seen Lin Feng. Besides, he was so young. At that moment, he was releasing sword energy, the energy looked extremely solid and thick. At the academy, there wasn't such a strong student. While Du Gushang's heart was pounding, Lin Feng had arrived in front of him in the blink of an eye. The earth fusion wasn't only embodied by Lin Feng's swordplay. It also affected Lin Feng's speed, he had broken through to a special cultivation dimension. Since he was in perfect symbiosis with the earth, he could move using the power of the earth. Whap! Du Gushang's body was blown away. A large red mark appeared on his face, the mark was from an open hand slap. The crowd was stupefied. How scary! He was a cultivator of the 8th Ling Qi layer and he was also ranked 4th amongst the top disciples of the academy. Surprisingly, he couldn't withstand a single slap from Lin Feng and was sent flying. The mean girl was also astonished. Her mouth was wide open. She looked as if she had seen something absolutely extraordinary. Du Gushang, who was extremely powerful and influential, had been slapped in the face by a young man. Who was he? Yun Shi looked happy and amazed. Lin Feng was so frivolous and unruly. The view of Du Gushang getting slapped was even more shocking than seeing He Mo being defeated. All right. He deserves to be one of the military students. These students in governmental affairs can only talk big, but in reality, they cannot withstand a single blow, said the people in the crowd. As expected, many people couldn't stand Du Gushang. Du Gushang's facial expression was terrifying. He looked like an injured animal. He was looking at Lin Feng in an ice-cold way and said, "Who are you?" "Me," said Lin Feng while pointing at himself, and then immediately said, sounding cold and detached, "I am a nobody, I cannot rival you," said Lin Feng in the tone of a joke. Yun Shi giggled. She couldn't help but burst into laughter. If Lin Feng was a nobody, what was Du Gushang? A nobody. For a moment, Du Gushang didn't understand. Then he heard some people laugh who were saying, "How ridiculous," he was making fun of him, saying that he couldn't rival with him, but now that he's facing him, he got slapped silly and cannot even withstand a single blow. "If I were him, I wouldn't in the Imperial City, I would get the hell out of here and run as far as I could go." When Du Gushang heard that person making fun of him, a hideous expression appeared on his face. Lin Feng. He finally understood thanks to that person who was making fun of him. The one who had just slapped him was Lin Feng. He had just said that Lin Feng couldn't rival him. At that moment, the mean girl was shaking. Lin Feng, that was Lin Feng. Actually, he was much stronger than Du Gushang. "You will regret what you did today," threatened Du Gushang, sounding cold and detached. Immediately after, he turned around and started leaving. He had been humiliated, he couldn't stay there. "Wait, wait," said Lin Feng in a cold tone. Du Gushang thus stopped and slowly turned around. He then looked at Lin Feng in a cold way. "Are you thinking of leaving like that?" said Lin Feng as if he was amused. "What do you want?" said Du Gushang, who was surprised. Would Lin Feng dare to continue? "A moment ago, you wanted me to slap my own face, kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times in front of you. Now, you found out that you are much weaker than me. Do you think that you can leave that easily?" Lin Feng made it sound like he had no choice but to follow Du Gushang's lead and continued, "What kind of person do you think I am?" When the crowd heard Lin Feng, they got excited. They wanted to see what Lin Feng would do to Du Gushang. "Show me how it is done, slap your own face, kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times in front of me," said Lin Feng, sounding imposing, domineering, and whose voice was even colder. His smile had disappeared, and his tone had become sharp, like his sword. "You want me to slap my own face, kneel 3 times, and kowtow 9 times in front of you," said Du Gushang, who couldn't believe it. Lin Feng dared request such a thing from him. "It seems that when I speak, people like you think they can ignore me, therefore I will have to do it myself," said Lin Feng in a low voice. Suddenly, he rushed forward like a madman. His silhouette vanished in a flash. Without hesitation, he unleashed an attack. Du Gushang's heart was pounding. How fast was Lin Feng? In a flash, Lin Feng had arrived in front of him and Lin Feng's finger was pointing at him. The tip of his finger was filled with sword qi and it suddenly rushed towards Du Gushang at incredible speed. Hastily, Du Gushang raised his fist to block the attack, but suddenly, a long and horrible shriek filled the air. Du Gushang's face suddenly turned deathly pale. His fist had been impaled by Lin Feng's finger. Whap! Lin Feng slapped Du Gushang once more and the sound echoed through the atmosphere. Whap! 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 Lin Feng was unceasingly slapping Du Gushang's face. The crowd was watching, blankly staring at that scene. Du Gushang's arrogant face was going through a thorough beating and his heart was filling with coldness. Du Gushang had been ignorant. Lin Feng was playing with him as if he was a toy. Lin Feng was violently slapping his face in front of everyone. Since I have to do it myself, there is an extra fee included. When Lin Feng stopped talking, two loud sounds successively filled the atmosphere. Du Gushang was kneeling down and crawling on the ground and kowtowing in front of Lin Feng. He was extremely proud and usually so arrogant, this was a huge humiliation for him. His heart was pounding and he was sweating cold sweat. What a cruel guy. If I am a nobody who cannot rival you, what are you doing kneeling down and kowtowing me, said Lin Feng in a disdainful way while glaring at Du Gushang who was crawling on the ground. Du Gushang had just broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer, when facing a cultivator in the Earth fusion dimension, he basically couldn't withstand a single finger. Lin Feng had already fought against cultivators of the Xian Qi layer and nearly killed one. Du Gushang lowered his head, his heart was filled with endless hatred and wrath. A moment later, a foot pressed against his lower jaw and he heard Lin Feng's cold voice. Get lost. Lin Feng only said these two words and Du Gushang's body was sent flying away. Lin Feng didn't look at him anymore, he then turned to Yun Shi, warmly smiled at her and said, if you want me to take care of her, I'll immediately handle her. By her, Lin Feng obviously meant the mean girl. At that moment, the mean girl was shaking and her heart was pounding. Yun Shi just said, in a cold and detached way, in the tone of a joke, it's best not to touch such filthy people. Alright, forget it then, I don't like touching them either, said Lin Feng while laughing softly. Immediately after, he pointed at the 5th room of Cultivation Tower, it was empty, it was the place Du Gushang had seized. You want to go into the Cultivation Tower? Yun Shi shivered, she looked at Lin Feng and said in a soft voice, I cannot go in. I'll help you, said Lin Feng while smiling. He grabbed her hand and started walking. Immediately after, Lin Feng jumped into the air. Yun Shi was having a panic attack, she closed her eyes in fear and she could barely open them, she realized that she was high in the air and flying, her heart was pounding from fear of falling. Then, she looked at the handsome young man on her side and her heart was filled with endless softness and tenderness. What an amazing agility technique, thought the crowd when they saw Lin Feng and the girl. He was high up in the air, how powerful. When he arrived high in the air, Lin Feng stood on the energy from the atmosphere and started walking on the invisible force. Lin Feng and Yun Shi shot across the sky like an arrow and landed on the 5th room of the Cultivation Tower which was a few hundred meters in the air. When Yun Shi saw the small silhouettes on the ground beneath the tower, she had the impression she was in a dream and nothing was real. Train hard, said Lin Feng while smiling at Yun Shi. Immediately after, he moved again and was immediately on the 3rd room. He immediately entered in a room. There was nobody in the 3rd room either. It belonged to the death god Wen Ao Shui. Lin Feng obviously could use the room if he pleased. If there had been nobody in the other rooms, he would have gone there as well, regardless of who they belonged to. Concerning Yun Shi, when she saw Lin Feng move away, her dream to practice in that cultivation tower had become reality but she wasn't excited, in her heart, she felt like she had lost something. Everything was like a dream, but that natural, unrestrained and frivolous young man was just a passerby. He was so outstanding that she would only be able to look up at him in the sky spreading his wings and flying away. What Yun Shi didn't know was that, at that moment, the two girls with whom she had come with were still down on the ground and were jealous of her. They envied her because having the opportunity to practice in that tower was something that they were all yearning for. Concerning the mean girl, at that moment, her heart was filled with regret. The people in the crowd had different facial expressions. Lin Feng seemed to be a person that nobody could prevent from moving forwards. At that moment, nothing of what had happened was present in Lin Feng's heart. At that moment, in his heart and thoughts, there were only 3 things, the strong cultivator's memories that were separated into 3 parts. They were all extremely powerful. The surplus souls technique could divide the soul into many surplus souls filled with extreme power, the power to control the 10,000 things of creation. The surplus souls technique could divide the soul into many surplus souls filled with extreme power, the power to control the 10,000 things of creation. Lin Feng was drowned in these memories. He was inspecting the martial skills and agility techniques that the Zun cultivator had been using. They were extremely powerful. There were also things about fabricating weapons and concocting pills. They required the usage of surplus souls. After he learned how to master the surplus souls technique and having to strengthening his soul, then it was possible to practice the other techniques. Everything would be easier to learn with a stronger soul. Besides, the power to control energy would be enhanced. Therefore, Lin Feng, after analyzing the situation, had decided to practice the surplus souls technique. Before being able to learn how to use surplus souls, Lin Feng had to first comprehend the soul and how it functioned. It would enable him to have a clear and distinct perception of the existence of his soul. It would enable him to pierce through the mysteries of the soul. He would be able to transfer his thoughts directly into his soul. This was, however, the most basic step. The technique included a method to visualize the soul and understand its complexities. Besides, Lin Feng had access to the earth fusion dimension and had a strong power of comprehension. He only needed a few days to master the method of visualizing his soul. Lin Feng didn't know that the strong cultivator, during his training, had required 2 years to be able to see his soul. Lin Feng could do it in such a short time thanks to the earth fusion and because his soul was already very powerful. At that moment, in Lin Feng's mind, he could see a dark illusion of himself, as if it was his dark self, a black silhouette, as if was the essence of his soul. In his previous life, Lin Feng didn't dare to imagine looking at a spirit. On the path of cultivation, it was said that after dying, one could see their own soul. Besides, it was also said that it was possible to transfer the power of the souls. The second step of the technique of the surplus souls was the spirit movement. It was about comprehending the soul on a much higher level. It was about being able to control the soul and move it to your will, otherwise it wouldn't be possible to use the surplus soul and it would be useless. In comparison with the first step, which was also about understanding the soul, Lin Feng found the second step was much easier. He was quickly able to achieve the spirit movement and even managed to make his soul leave his body and move as a spirit. The third step of the technique of the surplus souls was the incomplete soul. It was the most critical step. This step was different from the 2 others. The incomplete soul was the main part of the technique which made it so powerful. This step was extremely important. While practicing cultivation, the soul would separate into many surplus souls, 1 or 2, but a strong cultivator could obtain 100 or 1,000 surplus souls. The most terrifying cultivators who existed could obtain billions of surplus souls to an almost endless number. The strength of the soul was as vast and powerful as the universe. Lin Feng was sitting cross-legged. At that moment, in the air, there was a shadow floating in the atmosphere. If somebody had been there and could see that shadow, they would have realized that it looked like a perfect double for Lin Feng. That was Lin Feng's soul. At that moment, Lin Feng closed his eyes and took a deep breath. There was an image in Lin Feng's hand. He then exhaled and said in a low voice, "Split." After that, an invisible strength spread through his body and a violent pain overcame all of his senses. He started shaking and his heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. How painful! Lin Feng had the feeling he was being cut into pieces by 1,000 swords. The pain was similar to when his celestial spirit was awakened. Lin Feng immediately fainted. He couldn't stand the intense pain that filled his consciousness. At that moment, Lin Feng felt another pain within his soul. Lin Feng's soul started to struggle. A small black piece was reluctantly torn from Lin Feng's soul. That black piece turned into a surplus soul. At that moment, Lin Feng's body was shaking and shivering. He was agonizing. The pain was unreal. Finally, the surplus soul was formed and floated in the air. It was a very small part of Lin Feng's soul. His entire body was covered with a cold sweat. Lin Feng couldn't help but smile wryly. Practicing cultivation required an infinite amount of determination. He had only managed to make a single surplus soul. The technique of the surplus souls was revered, but many cultivators wouldn't dare practice it because of the risks. If a cultivator wanted to divide his spirit into 1,000 surplus souls, he had to endure terrible pain for each soul. Besides, there was still a chance that it could fail and not form a surplus soul. Sometimes, they would even stop when splitting their soul as the pain was too much. Only those who had an iron determination could practice such techniques. Without determination and willpower, the body and the mind would not be able to handle such incredible pain. Lin Feng's heart fluctuated again. That small black surplus soul floating in the air moved towards the whole soul. They seemed to be in harmony with each other as if they were connected, yet they remained separate. Lin Feng calmly took a few breaths, which allowed him to calm down. His heart started to violently pound again as his body became tense. This was what it took to understand the soul. Suddenly a new surplus soul appeared. With an incredible strength, it was possible to reach the heavens, to receive other people's worship, but how difficult was it? One had to go through incredible pain, but to what extent? Only those with an indestructible willpower and determination could reach the heavens and were able to reach great achievements. The Zun layer cultivator could kill millions of people and be worshipped, while a weak cultivator could only get bullied and humiliated. For example, during the war, Han Mo and Yen Yuping Sheng had appeared. They could kill a few thousand soldiers very easily. With them involved, it was easy to determine the outcome of a battle. One attack carried out by them from the sky could annihilate an endless amount of soldiers on the ground. A melody from a zither could leave the battlefield littered with corpses. These people were extremely strong. Lin Feng needed to become stronger. He needed to reach the heavens and have the power to kill anyone who would bully him. Lin Feng wasn't aware of how much time had elapsed. At that moment, outside of the tower there were many people who were calmly waiting. Amongst them was a from the government of the imperial city. Lin Feng's titles were ready and he could receive them officially, but he was still in the cultivation room which could not be disturbed. The person sent by the government didn't leave, he also didn't disturb Lin Feng. He was only waiting there calmly. He didn't look impatient or annoyed at all. Many people were waiting outside of the cultivation tower as well and were surprised. That person had already arrived a few days back and was surprisingly still waiting for Lin Feng. Lin Feng was really prestigious. That person from the government didn't even dare to disturb Lin Feng in his cultivation room. He was waiting there even though he didn't know how much time Lin Feng would need before being done with his practice. At that moment, when looking up at the majestic tower, more precisely at the fourth room, the door of the closed cultivation room started moving and slowly opened itself. The crowd was stupefied. A silhouette came out of it. That silhouette immediately jumped in the air and at the moment it fell down to the ground, an invisible energy emerged and positioned itself to cushion the shock. The silhouette gently landed on the ground. That person was wearing a long gown, carrying an ancient sword on his back. It was precisely Lin Feng. When the person from the imperial city saw him come down, they smiled and went towards him while saying, "Lin Feng, Your Highness has asked us to come and hand this certificate to you which certifies your titles. From now on, you are the owner of Yangzhou City." After that, the person handed over a certificate to Lin Feng which was purple and gold in color. "Thank you and sorry for the trouble," said Lin Feng while receiving his certificate. It was written in big and majestic characters, "Qi Xia Officer, Marquis, Yangzhou City Fief. You're welcome. I have fulfilled my duty. I'm leaving now." That person smiled again and immediately turned around as they abruptly left. That person had been waiting there for a few days to personally deliver the titles to Lin Feng. Lin Feng packed up his titles and smiled. He turned around and looked at a person who was glaring at him. It was Du Gushang who was staring at him with an evil look. On that day, after having been humiliated by Lin Feng, he had gone back to his clan to bring people to kill Lin Feng, but his clan refused to fight against Lin Feng. In the future, his clan forbade him from causing Lin Feng any trouble. Written on Lin Feng's robe was a name, Duan Wuya. If he killed Lin Feng, he had to remember that he was part of Duan Wuya's faction. Even though Du Gushang hated him, he still had no say in the matter. If he didn't receive the help of his clan, relying on his own strength, he couldn't kill Lin Feng. Lin Feng raised his head, looked at another room of the cultivation tower. The door was still closed. Yun Shi was probably still inside. Du Gushang, if anything happens to her, no one can save you, said Lin Feng extremely coldly. Deadly qi was released from his body. Du Gushang was astonished and terrified, he was shaking. Lin Feng had only said a few words, but it had been enough to terrify him. Du Gushang's facial expression was extremely ugly. He really wanted to teach Yun Shi a lesson. But Lin Feng was threatening him. Besides, being threatened by Lin Feng was a new humiliation. His cheeks were burning. Everybody was looking at him and laughing. Don't forget what I said Lin Feng indifferently. Immediately after, he left. The end of the year was approaching. Lin Feng had to go back to Yangzhou City. On an ancient road, there were many people on horses galloping towards Yangzhou City. On an ancient road, there were many people on horses galloping towards Yangzhou City. Galloping on the ancient road was notably one girl. She was wearing a red changpao. She looked powerful and was also very beautiful. Her eyes revealed her arrogance. Qian, this time, when we arrive in Yangzhou City, you will be able to demonstrate your extraordinary talents and abilities. Everybody in the clan will be extremely proud of you. At that moment, a young man said that to girl in the red changpao. He looked excited. That young man was Lin Hong. Next to Lin Hong was Lin Qian, his sister. Everybody in the Lin clan was proud to be associated with Lin Qian. These days, Lin Qian had become more mature, the qi emerging from her body was extraordinary. 1 year in the imperial city had enabled Lin Qian to advance from the first Ling qi layer, to break through to the fourth Ling qi layer. She was a real genius. She had gone through such difficult training to accomplish those results. Lin Qian wanted to become a dragon amongst mortals. She was arrogant and wanted to look down on other people from above. Such a personality required her to have a strict determination, in order to unceasingly become stronger. Brother, you are also quite strong. There aren't many who can rival with you in Yangzhou City, said Lin Qian calmly. The sound of her voice floated in the wind and reached Lin Hong's ears, which made a smile appear on his face. After having acquired both wealth and prestige, they were going back to their hometown where everybody would be proud of them. Qian, I'm still too weak in comparison with you, said Lin Hong while smiling. Actually, she was indeed much stronger than him. Besides, one of the 8 high officials, Chu Zhanpeng, was interested in her, which made a lot of people envious. Lin Qian and her friends were all disciples of the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, and they were more talented than Lin Hong, but he was happily following his sister in the group. Chu Zhanpeng was their source of inspiration. Lin Feng was the piece of trash that the Lin clan expelled. The last time they saw him, he was extremely strong. They hadn't seen him for a while, but no doubt that he had become even stronger. Lin Qian didn't know about Lin Feng's new title of Marquis. Lin Hong and her had been practicing in a cultivation room until the annual meeting. They wanted to be as strong as possible when they went back to Yangzhou City. Right after leaving her cultivation room, she jumped on horseback and rushed to Yangzhou City. On the same ancient road, there was another girl wearing fire-red clothes. She was also riding a horse and rushing to Yangzhou City. Nalan Feng looked at the young man next to her. She was smiling softly and tenderly. Du Gu, thank you for accompanying me to Yangzhou City, said Nalan Feng. She was a girl in love. Du Gu Xiao was a member of the Du Gu clan. The Du Gu clan was a clan tied to the imperial court. He had powerful connections. Besides, he was also extremely powerful. He was Nao Lan Feng's boyfriend. Nao Lan Feng and Du Guxiao had been in a relationship for 2 years now, but it was secret. Nao Lan Feng didn't take offense though, because she was proud to be Du Guxiao's girlfriend and she was in love. Nao Lan Feng was the daughter of the Nao Lan clan of Yangzhou, but in comparison with the Du Gu clan who had ministers within the court, the Nao Lan clan was nothing. They were not even worth looking at. Nao Lan Feng knew this was the case, but Du Guxiao had accepted to go accompany her to Yangzhou city, which was giving her a great deal of face. She was very touched by him accompanying her. "We've been together for so long, I told you, I will help you rise through the social ladder," said Du Guxiang calmly. Nao Lan Feng looked delighted. Obtaining a higher social status was her biggest ambition. "Iya." Nao Lan Feng urged on her horse, which dashed faster, making her long hair and red clothes flutter in the wind. Her heart was galloping at full speed, just like the horse. "Lin Qian of the Lin clan, I wonder if you can fight against me?" Nao Lan Feng looked extremely impatient. This time, in Yangzhou city, everybody would see Du Guxiao escorting her and would be surprised. At that moment, Lin Qian and Nao Lan Feng were going back to Yangzhou city as heroes and expected everyone to worship them. They thought that everybody was going to consider them as goddesses. Lin Qian and Nao Lan Feng didn't know that, at the moment when they had already been traveling for a while, rushing over to Yangzhou city, outside of the imperial city, 2 extremely precious dragon colt horses had just departed. There was a handsome young man and a beautiful young girl riding these 2 dragon colt horses. The boy was handsome and clean, he looked heroic. The girl was wearing clothes whiter than snow and was extremely beautiful. She looked like a celestial being. Lin Feng turned around and looked at the imperial city from outside. Life was so fleeting. Time passed at the speed of light. Nobody could predict anything. Lin Feng could still remember the year before when he and his father were expelled from the Lin clan. Back then, he had shown Yangzhou city how strong he was and returned to the Yunhai sect. But when he arrived at the Yunhai sect, it was destroyed and its members had been slaughtered. Lin Feng had then gone to the imperial city and had joined the Celestial Academy. Concerning the future, it was filled with uncertainties. A year had already passed and Lin Feng was just as determined and motivated as before. He was high-spirited and full of determination. That year hadn't been like the others, he had gotten familiar with this new world and gained his own power. For someone who had come from another world, he had quickly become accustomed to the world of cultivation. He had broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer and had learned how to penetrate into a special cultivation dimension, the Earth Fusion dimension. Everybody found his talent amazing. Lin Feng was looking at Meng Qing, who was riding next to him. He had a soft and tender smile on his face. It had only been a short time since he had met the young girl, but she was following him everywhere. Without complaining, she just silently and secretly followed him everywhere. Everything she did was for Lin Feng, as if that girl had been sent from heaven to watch over him. Meng Qing noticed that Lin Feng was staring at her. She had a strange facial expression for a second and then looked at the vast and boundless road before them. She was calm, serene yet as cold as ice, like an ice goddess. "Meng Qing, do you remember the first time we rode a horse?" said Lin Feng while smiling. Meng Qing slightly nodded, of course she knew. "Well then we should ride one horse, like we did back then," said Lin Feng with a sly smile. He then jumped up in the air and immediately landed behind Meng Qing. The dragon colt horse neighed and galloped even faster, which made Meng Qing's body lean backwards against Lin Feng's chest. He took advantage of the situation and took Meng Qing into his arms. Both of them were extremely close to each other, as if they were in an embrace. That move made Meng Qing shiver from head to toe. "This guy. I will lead the horse," said Lin Feng while smiling wholeheartedly. He then grabbed Meng Qing's hands, which were holding the reins, and the horse galloped even faster. When Meng Qing sensed Lin Feng's hands holding hers, she felt an electric shock run through her body. She could feel Lin Feng's chest pressed against her body. She had a strange sensation in her heart, as if she was floating on clouds. She didn't push him back. She just calmly sat on the horse, leaning against Lin Feng's chest. It was very calm, peaceful, and warm. In a distant place, quite far from Yangzhou City, there was a chain of mountains. Surprisingly, there were many people on one of the mountains and they were very agitated. These people all released a strong qi, some of them were fighting, some others were practicing cultivation to the side. On the mountain, there were also many horses, qi xia armored horses. In the mountains, above a precipice was a single silhouette. That man was closing their eyes and could feel the wind against his body. He had the impression of being absent from the material world. That person stayed like that for a while and then abruptly opened his eyes. The dazzling light of a blade flashed through his eyes. On that person's face, a huge word was carved, Dao. That person looked extremely brutal and aggressive. Blade of the wind, said that person in a low voice. A long blade cut through the air like it was a blade made from wind. It was almost invisible and inaudible, except for a magnificent and resplendent silver light which was diffused. Kacha, a small sound emerged and in the distance, a huge rock was cut into pieces. He. Ba Dao seemed satisfied of himself. He put his blade back in his back and gazed into the distance. Immediately after, in the distance, he saw two silhouettes riding one horse coming towards the mountain where there were many people. He finally arrived. When Ba Dao saw the two people approaching, he seemed really happy and smiled. The Qi Xie troops had been waiting there in the mountains for them. They were waiting to go to Yangzhou City. The end of the year in Yangzhou City was a happy event. The juniors who were practicing outside of their hometown usually came back to see their families. At that moment, Yangzhou City was lively. The end of the year in Yangzhou City was a happy event. The juniors who were practicing outside of their hometown usually came back to see their families. At that moment, Yangzhou City was lively. The guards raised their heads on the top on the gate. They looked domineering and majestic. There was a continuous flow of pedestrians whispering things in the city. Have you heard that the prodigy of the Lin clan Lin Qian came back to Yangzhou City? Now, Lin Qian is terrific. She is a student of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu and has a high social status. She is even stronger than some elders of her clan. Besides, some students of the Holy Courtyard followed her. That's really amazing, said some to one of the crowd in a low voice. They looked envious. Lin Qian was amazingly strong and was the pride of the Lin clan. Thanks to her, the rise of the Lin clan was destined. So what? Don't you know that when Naolan Feng came back, Naolan Xiong organized a grand banquet and many noble people attended? Besides, the Lin clan wasn't invited. Naolan Xiong did it on purpose because his daughter Naolan Feng has brought back a young man with her. His name is Du Gu Xiao. He is related to some of the imperial ministers, one person who controls several thousands upon thousands. I don't dare think about such people, said the person next to them. They were surprised. Everywhere in Shuiyu, an imperial minister was an extremely high status. They were extraordinary people. Naolan Feng had the good fortune to get acquainted with someone, whose relatives were imperial ministers. It would enable the Naolan clan to rise splendidly. How terrific! The Naolan clan and the Lin clan both want to rise. The two other clans cannot rival them any longer. All they can do is side with those in power. Absolutely. Last year, during the annual competition of Yangzhou City, Naolan Feng and Lin Qian were both extremely strong, but after that, Bai Yuan Hao had appeared. He was even stronger than them. Oh, I just remembered, there was Lin Feng as well, the one who was expelled from the Lin clan. I don't know what he's been doing recently. Lin Feng. What could he do? He doesn't have an influential background. He must be leading a vagrant life and roaming the streets. Maybe Lin Qian and Naolan Feng have already gotten rid of him, and even if they haven't, Lin Xian and Nalan Feng have become so strong that Lin Feng could never catch up with them, said someone while sighing and shaking their head. At the annual competition of Yangzhou City, neither Lin Xian nor Nalan Feng had been the most brilliant young talent, instead, it had been an extremely frivolous young man, Lin Feng. These days, they hadn't received any news. Maybe he had died somewhere outside. Of course, nobody was really sure. Everyone was talking about Lin Qian and Nalan Feng, the two prodigies of Yangzhou City. Every year at the end of the year, people used to gossip about the strong cultivators each year, but that year was particularly exciting. There were these two extremely strong and powerful female cultivators and they were coming back stronger than ever. Occasionally, on the road, Lin Feng's name could be heard as well. People were usually just mentioning his name without being too interested. Boom! Boom! Noises were emerging from the distance and spread through the atmosphere. It sounded like galloping horses but it didn't seem plausible. How could horses emit such a concentrated and synchronized sound while galloping? Only a magnificent army with veterans could emit such sounds. The crowd in Yangzhou City was, however, still walking around in the city, leisurely and carefree. They didn't notice anything strange. Boom, boom boom boom, the sound was getting louder and louder. Many people were a bit surprised, trying to concentrate and listen to see if there was anything strange. Besides, the sound was getting more and more intense. The ground was even starting to shake. The crowd was stupefied. They looked in the direction of the Yangzhou City gate. In the distance, it seemed like there was a cloud of dust rising into the sky. What's going on? All the people were gradually noticing it. There was a massive cloud of dust. Besides, that sound was really the sound of galloping horses. How loud, it made their hearts tremble. Some red silhouettes gradually appeared in their field of vision. They were all wearing red armor. The horses were red as well. They all emitted a strong qi as they rushed through the air. They were galloping towards Yangzhou City at full speed and a cloud of dust was rising around them, looking like a hurricane. Boom boom boom, even though the guards at the top of the city gate had a position which enabled them to see into the distance, what was moving towards them seemed like a boundless dust cloud. Their hearts were pounding like crazy. An army. Surprisingly, it was an army. That was a terrifying and well-trained army of veterans. It was the first time that the city guards saw such a strong qi. Such a huge army in a perfect formation was also something breathtaking. They had the impression that their hearts were beating in their throats. The guards weren't the only ones, the population was also panicking while the army was moving nearer and nearer. Surprisingly, they were armored horses. It was a huge army of armored horses. Most people had never seen such a huge army of armored horses. It seemed like the ground would cave in under their hoofs. The ground was violently shaking, everybody was absolutely dumbstruck. Why would such an army come to Yangzhou City? Quickly, quickly, close the gate, shouted some guards on top of the gate in panic. Shut the hell up, we have to keep it open, if somebody closes the gate, I'll kill him, shouted the leader of the guards. He was furious at those bastards who wanted to die. With such an army of armored horses, if the gate was closed, a single attack would be enough to destroy it. Besides, if they made the army angry, such an army could massacre the entire city. Amongst the guards on the city gate, none of them had the courage to fight. They were scared to death and their faces deathly pale. None of them had ever seen such a huge army in perfect formation. That sort of army was only seen on a battlefield but not in a small town like Yangzhou City. Quickly, go and tell the head of the city, hurry up, shouted one of the guards. Obviously, they didn't know what to do. All they could think about was telling Nalan Xiong. Roger, said a few guards when they heard the order and then immediately left. After all, who wanted to stay there? If the army attacked, they would all die. After that, when the vast army arrived near the Yangzhou City gate, they slowed down. They stopped before the gate of the city and didn't enter it. Even though the army was just calmly waiting there, they were still releasing extremely strong qi. It enveloped the gate of Yangzhou city as well as the crowd on and around it. Everyone within the city felt like they were being suffocated by the intense qi. How monstrous! The red armor, red horses, the image was shocking, almost like a psychological attack. It was too much for the crowd. They had never thought that someday, such an army would appear in Yangzhou city. At that moment, amongst the army, a silhouette emerged and raised their head, looked at the people on top of the gate and said, "Listen, from now on, Yangzhou city is the fief of the Qi Xie Marquis. Everything in Yangzhou city now belongs to the officer of the Qi Xie army. Now, bring the head of the city to come and greet him." The Qi Xie Marquis, the Qi Xie officer, how powerful and majestic. Besides, he was making the head of the city come to greet them. They definitely had an extremely high social status. So that's how it was, the Qi Xie Marquis was the owner of Yangzhou city, but nobody knew who this person was. The crowd felt a bit relieved, since the fief of Yangzhou city belonged to the Qi Xie Marquis, the army wasn't going to attack the city. That huge army hadn't come with malicious intent. "Go! Quickly bring the head of the city here," shouted the leader of the guards, on the top of the gate, to one guard who wasn't moving. That person nodded and abruptly left in the direction of the government. He hadn't clearly heard the words of the Qi Xie soldiers though, he had only heard when he was told to bring the head of the city to greet them. The government was a huge and vast place. There were tables everywhere. The head of the city, Nalan Xiong, had organized an annual banquet to which many wealthy and noble cultivators were participating. He hadn't invited the Lin clan, but the atmosphere was pleasant and lively at that moment. Many people were proposing toasts. It seemed that Nalan Xiong was extremely proud because of his new son-in-law, and he was so excited that he was unceasingly drinking. "Master, master." At that moment, a worried voice spread in the air, interrupting the crowd. Nalan Xiong frowned and looked at the distance, seeing a guard worriedly and hastily rushing over to him. "A huge army is outside the city and we don't know who they are and what they are doing here," said the guard, who was uninterruptedly sweating. The crowd was stupefied. An army had come to the city. At that moment, another silhouette appeared and was running in their direction. "Stop," said Nalan Xiong. "Are you here because of the army too? What is that army doing right now?" "They want you to go and greet them," said the second guard who had arrived. Nalan Xiong frowned and looked pensive. "Tell their leader to come here, pay his respects and apologize for his offense." At that moment, a cold and detached voice came from the host seat. It was Du Gushao. He was furious and half-drunk already. Surprisingly, there were people who dared disturb him during the banquet, and besides that, they also wanted Nalan Xiong to come and greet them. Since Du Gushao was there, they had to give him face. He was there, so no matter who it was, they had to come pay respects and respectfully apologize for offending him. Many people sighed. He was really worthy of his social status. He was extremely strong. They were all panicking, and he, instead, ordered the troublemakers to come and apologize for their offense. Du Gushao was wildly arrogant and presumptuous. The guards looked petrified and nervous. "But. There is no but. Tell him to get over here and apologize for his offense. Say that Du Gushao gave the order, otherwise they will regret the consequences." Du Gushao stood up and released some cold qi. His voice was ice cold as well. The guard was surprised and blankly staring at Du Gushao. When he saw the coldness in his eyes, he immediately nodded and said, "Roger." When they finished talking, the two guards abruptly left. "All right, everybody can continue. Let's not let such events ruin our banquet," said Nalan Xiong while raising his glass and smiling. Everybody raised their glass and laughed heartily. Concerning Du Gushao, he went back to his seat and looked calm. In such a small city, no matter how strong the person was, they had to obey him and apologize for their offense. The Qi Xie troops were calmly waiting outside of the city. The Qi Xie troops were calmly waiting outside of the city. At that moment, one guard came back from the government building. He climbed to the top of the gate and looked at the vast and boundless army. He couldn't help but shake from head to toe. "Tell him to get over here and apologize for his offense." The guard was thinking about these words and they did not sit well in his chest. If he said these words out loud, wouldn't they just kill him? "Open your mouth," said an aggressive voice piercing the guard's ears. The guard was shaking. Immediately after, he closed his eyes and said, "The head of the city said that you should go and apologize for your offense." When he finished talking, the guard felt as if he had been relieved from a huge burden. But when the other guards heard what he said, they were astonished. They were all shaking from head to toe while thinking about the reaction of the army. How did that arrogant bastard dare to tell the Qi Xie troops such an audacious thing? When the Qi Xie troops heard the words, they started to release an incredible amount of qi which created a hurricane which rushed towards the city gate. The entire crowd suddenly felt extremely cold. How cold? That qi was piercingly cold, to the extent that it made everyone feel a shiver run down their spines. Lin Feng, on his dragon-colt horse, moved forwards. Na Lan Xiong, was he really this brave? He was wearing a mask, but under his mask he had an incredibly evil grin. Lin Feng said, in a cold tone, "We have been invited to go to the government building to apologize." "Roger," shouted the troops in unison, which caused panic within the crowd. They brandished their spears and headed towards Yangzhou City. Lin Feng's voice wasn't loud, but when the guards and the crowd heard that the troops were going to the government for an apology, they felt that this was not a good thing for the Nalan clan. The young man riding the dragon-colt horse was probably their officer. How majestic, he could say a few words and the entire army obeyed him. Boom! Boom! The ground started shaking once again. The Qi Xie troops were galloping in perfect harmony which sent terrifying booms through the atmosphere, sounding like thunder. The hearts of the people in the crowd were pounding. The Qi Xie army transformed into a huge red dragon as it entered Yangzhou City. That huge red dragon seemed like it was flying through the city. At that moment, the people were panicking. None of them dared to block the way of the Qi Xie troops, everybody was moving aside. What a strong and powerful army. Where are they from? Why have they come to Yangzhou City? The people of Yangzhou City were asking themselves many questions. When they saw that huge army with their own eyes, they had the feeling that their heart would explode in their chest. They were way too majestic. The qi they were releasing was so strong that the people in the crowd had the feeling that their legs lost all power. Some of them were completely frozen, not daring to move. In the government building, the atmosphere was still lively and joyful. People were still merry and drinking. At that moment, the ground started shaking as if there was an earthquake. The people present at the banquet were suddenly stupefied and frowned. Immediately after, the noise of the Qi Xie horses galloping became louder and was unceasingly spreading through the atmosphere. What's going on? What the hell is this? Each and every single person who was present at the banquet stood up. Their facial expressions growing rigid, that noise was frightening. What was happening outside? Na Lan Xiong frowned and gazed into the distance outside the building. He looked lost in thought and seemed to be contemplating the size of the army. Father, do not worry. Du Gushao is here. The only reason why such a large army is coming here is because they want to apologize for their mistakes, said Na Lan Feng while slightly smiling. Du Gushao, with his social status, was not scared of any army. All right. Na Lan Xiong slightly nodded and said, all right, everyone, let's drink more. They are coming here to apologize. The guests listened to him but they couldn't ease the fear in their hearts. Were these people really coming to apologize? Why did the guests have the feeling that cold killing intent could be felt from the direction of the army? It seemed like it was coming from the Qi Xie army. The rumbling sounds were getting louder and louder. When the guard in front of the building saw the army galloping towards him in the distance, he was astonished. Red armor, red horses. They looked majestic and cruel. His heart started pounding in his chest. Only a short moment later, an incredibly vast and boundless army arrived in front of the government building. Boom! The sound of destruction spread through the atmosphere. A hurricane emerged and crushed the gate in front of the building. Boom! Sounds of things being destroyed filled the atmosphere. Everything in front of the government building had been destroyed. The Wuxia troops annihilated everything in their path and left no obstacle standing. After having cleared the path to the entrance of the building, the troops entered the government building. Even though their army was incredibly large, they were still in perfect formation. There wasn't the least bit of chaos in their formation. Concerning the guards, they were stunned by the sight of the sea of cavalry. They were standing motionless and let the cavalry pass by. They had the impression that the horses could crush them under their hoofs at any moment, but the army was in perfect formation and simply moved around the guards, not even a hair was touched. They were perfectly accurate with each of their movements. The guards were terrified to be standing in the path of the horses. People in the government building were panicking and running around like headless chickens. They were scared silly. The happy laughter and cheerful voices of the banquet had stopped, not because it was covered by the noise from the army, but because nobody felt like laughing anymore. Everybody was standing up and looking at that vast and majestic sea of Wuxia horses. They had never been this scared before. Their hearts were violently pounding. A gigantic and powerful Wuxia army like that could easily annihilate the city. Only a glance at these troops on their Wuxia horses was enough to scare even a hardened soldier. That army was composed of the most elite troops. Every single soldier was a talented and disciplined cultivator, and there was an army of these powerful cultivators heading in their direction. The troops suddenly adopted a spiral formation, encircling everybody who was present at the banquet. Not even a single drop of water could trickle through, making everybody unable to escape, even if they grew wings and attempted to fly out. At that moment, there wasn't a single person who could escape. This incredible army of elite troops could destroy anyone's courage. Na Xiong's heart was pounding. Such a huge and powerful army had come to apologize. Du Guxiao was frowning. He put down his glass and slowly walked towards the person who was the closest to him. He looked at the person in front of him. The person was wearing a red armor and a majestic helm. That person's facial expression was ice cold. He then said, "What guts? You are the Wuxia army, why have you come to Yangzhou city?" The Wuxia troops were elite troops in Shuiyu. The guests were stupefied. This army was the elite Wuxia army. That's why they were wearing red armor and had Wuxia armored horses. Nobody paid attention to him. They looked at Du Guxiao's performance as if he was a fool. Du Guxiao was furious. Mere soldiers dared to make him lose face. Especially now that he had bragged about how respected and influential he was. "Who's your officer? Show yourself and apologize." Du Guxiao shouted. Even though he felt scared standing before such a powerful army, he belonged to the Du Gu clan, he had the right to be arrogant. His family was incredibly powerful and it was hard to scare him when he had such a high status. Everybody in the Nalan clan treated him like a deity. He was drunk and started to believe that he actually was a deity when inside such a small city. He was extremely arrogant. Besides, he was the one who dared to force the army here. How could he flinch at this moment? Nalan Feng stood next to Du Guxiao. She was looking coldly at the army. She felt proud of the man she loved. Nobody dared offend the members of the Du Gu clan. Even the Wuxia officers wouldn't dare. After all, she didn't just pick anyone to be with her. "You are all extremely audacious, how dare you storm into the government like this?" Na Lan Feng said. She had the impression that her boyfriend was a mighty hero. She wasn't scared at all because a member of the Du Gu clan was beside her. Show myself. Apologize. Audacious? Lin Feng mockingly said. He made his horse slowly trot to the front of the army. He was wearing a bronze mask. His expression was ice-cold and evil. He didn't look at Du Gu Xiao and Na Lan Feng, he was looking directly at Na Lan Xiong. Na Lan Xiong, head of Yangzhou City, you wanted me to come here and apologize? Na Lan Xiong was astonished. How did Lin Feng know who he was within the crowd? Lin Feng frowned when he heard Du Gu Xiao interrupt with a shout, I'm talking to you, didn't you hear me? Lin Feng looked at Du Gu Xiao, another arrogant cultivator acting foolishly. What do you want? Said Lin Feng in a cold tone. The crowd was shocked. Du Gu Xiao was astonished. His face lost all color. The expression in his eyes turned ice-cold. My family name is Du Gu, said Du Gu Xiao in an arrogant tone. Lin Feng was surprised, Du Gu. That name sounded familiar. He had indeed met Du Gu Shang. Lin Feng looked at Du Gu Xiao again and a smile appeared under his bronze mask. So what? The Du Gu clan of the Imperial City, said Du Gu Xiao aggressively. His relatives are part of the Imperial ministers, said Na Lan Feng arrogantly. Now, get down off your horse and apologize. Then I will pretend that this never happened. Du Gu Xiao said when he heard Na Lan Feng say the word Imperial ministers, his facial expression also revealing a proud expression. Imperial ministers, whispered Lin Feng while lowering his head and looking at Du Gu Xiao with a cold stare. He only noticed that, every second, Du Gu Xiao was growing even more arrogant. Indeed, Du Gu Shang and him were both cut from the same cloth. Cut one of his arms off. Lin Feng said in a cold tone, while waving his hand. Everybody was dumbstruck. Cut one of his arms off. Cut one of his arms off. Lin Feng's voice was calm, everybody was absolutely petrified. Lin Feng wanted to cut one of Du Gu Xiao's arms off. Du Gu Xiao was related to an imperial minister and he would dare to cut his arm off. Du Gu Xiao's arrogant expression vanished. His heart was pounding. What did he just hear? After having declared his social status and demanding for Lin Feng to apologize, Lin Feng hadn't even paid attention to him and calmly ordered his soldiers to cut one of his arms off. People in the crowd felt like their hearts skipped a beat. What did you just say? Asked Na Lan Feng, whose heart was pounding. Immediately after, she looked at Lin Feng with an ice-cold glare. Du Gu Xiao was her boyfriend and she was extremely happy to be with him. When the people of the banquet had learnt that a huge army had come to Yangzhou City, they had all panicked. Only Na Lan Feng and Du Gu Xiao had remained calm and were extremely arrogant. They were the ones who demanded the army come to apologize. Listen to me, you want to cut one of my arms off, said Du Gu Xiao in an ice-cold tone, while releasing some cold qi. At the same time, a soldier wearing a bronze mask rushed out from the army while releasing some extremely thick and brutal qi. Slash! Lin Feng didn't feel like hearing any more words. Ba Dao jumped through the air. A magnificent and bright light filled the atmosphere. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared, the only thing left in the atmosphere was gushing blood. The entire atmosphere turned completely silent. Everybody was staring at the blood. Their hearts were shaken. They had really cut off his arm. That soldier didn't hesitate at all, the Qi Xia officer gave an order and his arm had immediately been completely cut off. Besides, that bright and dazzling light which flashed through the air remained in their minds, they couldn't think about anything else. Awe. The entire atmosphere was invaded by a heavy silence. Du Gu Xiao broke that silence when he uttered a long cry of agony. He was covering his bleeding stump with his other hand, his face was deathly pale, there wasn't the slightest trace of color in his face. Besides, on his side, Na Lan Feng was blankly staring at the scene. Her beautiful cheeks turned white. Had Du Guxiao really lost his arm? It's over. Na Lanxiong's heart was violently pounding. The Du Gu clan would never accept the fact that Du Guxiao's arm had been cut off, and they would hold the Na Lan clan responsible. How could this happen, thought Na Lanxiong while feeling enraged. He raised his head and looked at Lin Feng, the officer of the Qi Xie troops, who was wearing a bronze mask. At that moment, Lin Feng looked at him as well. Behind his mask, his face was as calm and serene as before. He did not care about the events that had just transpired. "You wanted me to come and apologize," said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. Na Lanxiong's facial expression became rigid. He was realizing that Lin Feng might also cut off his arms. This officer was insane. Would it be that simple though? But at that moment, Na Lanxiong was surrounded by an army and couldn't escape at all. Lin Feng just had to give the order and the Na Lan clan would be annihilated. Na Lanxiong had listened to Du Guxiao and told them to come apologize. He had asked the officer of the Qi Xie army to come and apologize. Of course, all of this was happening because Na Lanxiong had trusted Du Guxiao too much. After all, his family was tied to imperial ministers. However, he wouldn't have thought that an officer would actually dare to cut off one of Du Guxiao's arms, especially when considering his social background. "Who are you?" said Du Guxiao, sounding evil while staring at Lin Feng. He wanted to slaughter Lin Feng. "I am Du Guxiao of the Du Gu clan. Our clan has imperial ministers, and you dared to cut off my arm." "You are dead," shouted Na Lan Feng while staring at Lin Feng. Her facial expression was hideous. "Du Gu clan, imperial ministers, I know all of that," said Lin Feng indifferently. He then looked at Du Guxiao and said, "What is your relation to Du Guxiang?" "Huh?" Du Guxiao was surprised. He was staring at Lin Feng. "My older brother." "Since you know, how dare you cut off my arm?" At that moment, his wound was extremely painful. "Your older brother? You are all the same. You whole clan must be incredibly stupid," said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. He then added, "Could it be that your brother hasn't told you? A few days ago, at the Celestial Academy, I slapped him into a stupor and then made him kneel down and kowtow to me." Du Guxiao was violently shaking and staring at Lin Feng. He was dumbstruck. Surprisingly, it was him. He should have thought about this earlier. Qi Xie officer, Yangzhou City must be his fief. Why didn't he think about it sooner? That was because in his head, the Qi Xie army should belong to Duanren City, but surprisingly they had come to Yangzhou City. He was now realizing that the Qi Xie army hadn't gone back to Duanren City. Instead, they had come to the new fief of their officer, a small city that was not worth mentioning. Lin Feng had set a whole city on fire, had crossed a huge distance to save the princess. He rushed over to the imperial city to save Lu Zonglan from being executed, then he killed Duan Tianlang's son in front of him. He was the Marquis of Yangzhou City. Lin Feng had become a legend in the imperial city. Lin Feng was absolutely fearless. He didn't even fear Duan Tianlang and killed his son in front of him. Was there anything that Lin Feng didn't dare to do? Du Guxiao's face was deathly pale. Why did this happen to him? There were imperial ministers in his family. The crowd also noticed that Lin Feng was silent. They were stupefied. He had slapped Du Guxiao's brother. He even made him kowtow. Who was this person? He was truly insane. He wasn't even scared of facing the Du Gu clan. Na Lan Feng and Na Lanxiong saw that Du Guxiao had also become silent. They were shaking in fear. Du Guxiao, surprisingly, was keeping his mouth closed from fear. If he remained silent, it meant that Lin Feng was speaking the truth. His brother had really been slapped by Lin Feng and had kowtowed as an apology. "Who is he?" whispered Na Lan Feng, but Du Guxiao ignored her. He had a strange smile on his face. Good, good. Du Guxiao was almost driven insane. He couldn't do anything against Lin Feng. He wasn't strong enough to rival him and his clan would not risk getting involved. His brother had even been humiliated by him. All he could do was remain silent. His brother had been humiliated, he, himself, had just lost an arm, how could he not be driven into madness? That Qi Xia officer was really a terrifying existence. Du Guxiao demanded the army come and apologize. It seems like he knows the officer but can't afford to offend him, thought the people in the crowd. The Nalan clan was in trouble. A moment before, Du Guxiao was insufferably arrogant and aggressive, but then his arm was cut off. He didn't even dare to make another sound. The Nalan clan had no escape. Apologize? Lin Feng was standing before them, who could stop him? Everybody wanted to say that it had nothing to do with the Nalan clan so that they would be able to avoid a catastrophe. Nalan Xiong, I am the Qi Xia Marquis in Yangzhou City is my fief. I arrived in Yangzhou City and instead of a greeting, you demand an apology. How audacious, said Lin Feng in an extremely cold tone, making everybody shiver. What should be your punishment, said Lin Feng. Nalan Xiong's heart was beating extremely violently. He was the Marquis of Yangzhou City. He had surprisingly come to receive his fief and Nalan Xiong refused to greet him and demanded an apology. That was an offense. Nalan Xiong remained silent. He only saw Lin Feng turn to the other members of his clan. What do you think? How should he be punished? The crowd was shaking, Lin Feng was terrifying. The last person to speak will die, said Lin Feng, then suddenly everyone burst into uproar. Nalan Xiong is a criminal. He should die. When Nalan Xiong heard that, he evilly stared at the person. The person was flattering him a short moment before and at that moment he was saying that he should die. What a venomous snake. Indeed, Nalan Xiong should die. He definitely has to die. Yes, you're right, kill him. Everybody who was present was replying as quickly as possible, scared to be the last person. Lin Feng was smiling under his mask. Finally, he looked at Nalan Xiong and said, did you hear that? Everybody is saying that you should die. When Nalan Xiong saw that Lin Feng might kill him, and when he saw Lin Feng's calm eyes, he had the feeling that he knew him from somewhere. I know you. Who are you? Said Nalan Xiong to Lin Feng. He realized that Lin Feng may have come specifically for him. Do you want to know who I am? Said Lin Feng calmly. I do, said Nalan Xiong while nodding. He, of course, wanted to know. All right, I see. Lin Feng smiled, he put his hands on his bronze mask and slowly took it off. His face appeared, everybody, including Nalan Xiong, could see him. At that moment, the atmosphere became entirely silent. Commit suicide. Lin Feng. It's Lin Feng, I can't believe it. Their hearts were racing. The officer of the Qi Xia army was surprisingly Lin Feng. Back in the past, Lin Feng had begun to show his brilliant talent, but then the Lin clan and the Nalan clan made him their enemy and forced him to leave. The previous year, during the annual competition, many of the prestigious figures of Yangzhou City had personally seen Lin Feng. All the people present at Nalan Xiong's banquet were rich, noble and prestigious figures. Therefore, they could all recognize Lin Feng, that talented young man. The young man, who was now the officer of a powerful army which made the entire city vibrate, surprisingly was the same delicate and handsome young man they saw during the previous competition. Nobody would have ever thought of such a thing, even in their dreams. Besides, how old was Lin Feng? He was not even 18 years old, and he was already the officer of the Qi Xia army, the Qi Xia Marquis. He already had an army of tens of thousands under his control. That was amazing. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng and wanted to speak, but they all knew to remain silent. Nalan Xiong was also shaking. Lin Feng was surprisingly the officer of the Qi Xia army. Incredibly, it was the same Lin Feng. His heart was pounding. Back in the past, Lin Feng was considered trash and had been expelled from the Lin clan. Now, he had become a marquis. Nalan Xiong had the impression that the situation was contradictory with everything that he knew about Lin Feng. Of course, the person who was most surprised was Nalan Feng. When she saw Lin Feng take off his mask, she was dumbstruck. Her heart started pounding. Immediately after, she bit her lips and blankly stared at the frivolous and handsome young man. During the annual competition of the previous year, she had thought that she would be the best cultivator in the competition. She had thought that only Lin Qian would be her rival. However, nothing happened the way she had thought. Bai Yuanhou and Lin Feng appeared from nowhere. They had stolen her prestige. However, during the competition, she had thought that she was at the same cultivation layer as Lin Feng and she would easily surpass him in the future. However, Lin Feng was appearing in front of her again. He had an incredible social status. He had an army of Qi Xia cavalry and owned the entire Yangzhou city. He had cut off the arm of her influential and arrogant boyfriend. Lin Feng was not even agitated. Lin Feng had easily ordered for his arm to be cut off. Maybe this was very normal for him. Du Guzhao's social status was high, his relatives were imperial ministers. The fact that he had come with her had made Na Lan Feng extremely proud. The entire city of Yangzhou respected and admired her because of her boyfriend's status. That was why they were unceasingly flattering her. Even her clan had organized the banquet and invited the richest and most noble people to greet him. Na Lan Feng wasn't prepared for such a situation. She hadn't thought that a fight would break out at all. All of this was happening because of the Qi Xia army. Lin Feng had easily shattered her arrogance. Actually, he had crushed her entire reality and turned her world upside down. She was much weaker than Lin Feng. She could not even touch his shadow. Surprisingly, at that moment, the calmest person of the group was the person who had just lost an arm, Du Gushao. That was because Lin Feng had mentioned that he slapped Du Gushan. At that moment, Du Gushao understood what kind of person he was dealing with and the social status that Lin Feng had. He had never seen Lin Feng's face before. When looking at that young and handsome man, Du Gushao wanted to rip him to shreds. Lin Feng had not only crushed his arrogance but he also cut off his arm. Besides, his natural talent was far beyond Du Gushao. The crowd was astonished. When Lin Feng noticed the reactions, he was smiling coldly. Power was determined by strength and status. In the past, he was an unknown and quiet young man. Even though he had participated in the annual competition, his strength was still not enough. He also had no social status at all. He had been so talented that Na Lan Xiong wasn't able to bear it and forced the Gu clan and the Wen clan to get involved. Everybody had joined forces in an attempt to kill him. He had been reluctant to leave Yangzhou city, but now he was back. However, the new Lin Feng had become much stronger. He could control an entire army, therefore, he could look down on everyone. He had the power of life and death. He used to be humiliated every single day that he spent living in Yangzhou city, but he still returned to the place he called home. "Do you understand things more clearly now?" said Lin Feng in a calm voice, while looking at Na Lan Xiong. That calm voice made everyone tremble. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng. They were all confused. They were unable to calm their racing hearts. Nobody would have thought that the young man, who was forced from Yangzhou city in humiliation, would come back and shock them all. Na Lan Xiong was having trouble breathing as the shock had been too great. He didn't know what to say, but he knew, more than everyone else, what was going to happen. Lin Feng was as handsome, frivolous and determined as before. In the past, Lin Feng's strength wasn't enough to make a difference, but now he was able to control an entire army, and became the Marquis of Yangzhou city. Could Lin Feng still be the same weak young man? That was, of course, impossible. "What do you want?" Na Lan Xiong was staring at Lin Feng. He felt extremely disheartened. Today was supposed to be a happy day, but because of Lin Feng, it had become a tragic event. "What about you?" said Lin Feng while smiling coldly, and then continued, "Last year, you, Na Lan Xiong, as the head of the Na Lan clan, organized the annual competition. I had joined, but when I won, the Lin clan wanted my life. You, as the one organizing the event, didn't try to stop them at all. You gave your tacit agreement. You wanted me to die. I beat everybody, including your daughter. I even took her as a hostage, so of course, you wanted to see me dead. The Yangzhou city competition was a joke." Lin Feng was speaking slowly. "Besides, you organized everything to make your daughter seem stronger than she was. But now, I am stronger than your daughter. Back then, your daughter sent people to kill me because I refused to give her my table. She thought that she could put herself high above me. I could have died at any point." Lin Feng's words were insufferably powerful and cold. "Therefore, for everything that you made me suffer, I will return it back. I want you to take your own life. You must take your own life." Lin Feng's tone was calm and peaceful. The crowd was astonished and their hearts were pounding once again. Lin Feng was surprisingly asking Na Lan Xiong, the head of Yangzhou city, to commit suicide. In the past, who would have thought that the delicate and handsome young man would, one day, look at Na Lan Xiong and tell him to kill himself? In the past, Na Lan Xiong was sitting at the top and it was as if Lin Feng was an ant beneath his foot. "If I decide against that," said Na Lan Xiong while staring at Lin Feng aggressively, "you can choose to refuse. I don't have much time to play with you, so I will give you 10 seconds to think it over. If you don't reply, I will take that as your refusal. The countdown starts now." He had 10 seconds to decide. How domineering, how powerful. 1. 2. Lin Feng didn't care about what other people thought. He was looking at Na Lan Xiong and counting. Na Lan Xiong's face turned deathly pale. He had never thought that suddenly, someone would tell him to end his own life. Besides, he also had the choice to refuse. The only problem was, who would dare to refuse? 6. 7. Time passed, the 10 seconds had almost elapsed. Everybody was staring at Na Lan Xiong. "No, don't," said Na Lan Feng while looking at her father and shaking her head frenetically. She regretted everything at that moment. Everything that was happening was because of her. She had used her status to send people to kill him over nothing. If she hadn't acted that way in the past, maybe they wouldn't be in such a desperate situation at that moment. Her pride and arrogance had a price, and what a tragic one. 9. Ha 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 ha. At that moment, a loud laugh spread through the atmosphere. Na Lan Xiong was laughing as if he was carefree. PSSH. A sound echoed through the banquet hall along with the echoing laughter. Suddenly, blood started spilling from Na Lan Xiong's mouth. "Father." Na Lan Feng's face turned deathly pale. Her father had chosen to kill himself. He hadn't dared to gamble. Lin Feng was excessively cruel. Na Lan Feng felt hatred rise up from the bottom of her heart. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.